No one's ever really gone.
Sometimes that is better.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. What's with these awkward subjects? What's all this art so rubbish? To anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he is a man who punch sporadically a grouch. Linkara, he has his own spaceship, but he's always on his couch. Linkara, ghosts, gods, a universe in flux. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
Part 1, Splinter of the Mind's Vibes. So it took me forever to try to figure out why I haven't watched the Clone Wars. I watched the original animated movie back when it hit theaters, joking with my brother that it's the ultimate dream for George Lucas because he finally didn't have to make something with in-person actors, just CGI! George Lucas had nothing to do with the Clone Wars other than saying, "Hey, this looks neat, why don't we release this pilot for the show as a movie?" I bring this up to explain the mindset I had with Star Wars at the time the Clone Wars cartoon came out. I hated the prequels, sick of media about the prequels, and here we were getting this cartoon movie and TV series related to the prequels. Simply put, I wasn't interested, and the general thought at the time was George Lucas was the devil who ruined his own franchise while obsessed with an era of that franchise that only had diminishing returns. Obviously, time has softened our opinions. George Lucas is not the devil of the franchise, and while I still dislike the prequels immensely, I understand a lot better what he was trying to do and how much nostalgia and affection people have for them these days. But then that raises a question that has been asked to me before. Why haven't I watched the Clone Wars cartoon since then? It's a good question. Universally praised, the Clone Wars cartoon introduced many characters and concepts that would carry over into Disney's era, mostly thanks to Dave Filoni's involvement, and it brought about a lot of satisfaction for people who were disappointed by the films, but liked the more complete story told by the cartoon, particularly the ending arc that went to Disney Plus that was happening simultaneously with Revenge of the Sith, with many saying it redeemed the film's shortcomings entirely. And I think it was around then, when people were telling me about how good those last episodes were and how it fixed that movie, that it finally dawned on me why I have a visceral distaste for the show and I have not wanted anything to do with it. It never happened. Let me explain. Of course it's canon. Ahsoka is canon. What happened to Darth Maul is canon. The way events played out in Clone Wars and its follow-up series are all canon. Disney owns the franchise and dictates what did and did not happen in Star Wars, live action and cartoon, and thus it is all part of the larger story. And even before then, the Clone Wars started under Lucas's ownership. He had final say of what did and did not happen in Star Wars. So it's all canon and it all happened in universe. The problem is that I watched Revenge of the Sith in theaters when it first came out and none of that happened. Anakin did not have an apprentice. There was no takeover of Mandalore by Darth Maul. Darth Maul did not survive getting sliced in half and given robot legs. None of that happened in the movies. And yet they are events with character arcs and interactions and developments and relationships that feel like they really should get referenced if they had happened, like Anakin turning to Obi-Wan and saying, "Yeah, falling into that nest of Gundark sucked, but you know what really sucks? Losing my apprentice because of BS with the Jedi Council." It's a problem of vibes. Every time I think I'm ready to finally watch Clone Wars or Bad Batch or Ahsoka or see these Clone Wars characters in the live-action shows, there's something poking at the back of my brain going, this didn't happen. This is a band-aid that they slapped onto the prequels years after the prequels to try to fix their mess, long after I cared for them to fix their mess. I have the same problem with modern Star Trek, probably even more so because I'm a bigger Star Trek fan than Star Wars one. I mean, for God's sakes, I've gone on rants about there being unnecessary holes in nacelle pylons and the presence of external repair droids when for most normal people, this is not a problem. But yeah, it's the vibes. It feels inauthentic to me. It doesn't feel like the Star Wars I want to watch. And this is a thing that I have to continually repeat because people don't get it. This is a me problem. I acknowledge and admit that this is not a good mindset to have. I am not mad at you for liking this stuff or for not having that same vibe problem I do. But I have it and I cannot deny my emotions about it. But it also means that you're not going to convince me to like it just by watching it, because there's plenty of stuff that I've watched that I can admire the craftsmanship for, but the vibe problem is still there. So obviously this part is all about me laying into Disney now, right? Dave Filoni controls so much of Disney Star Wars right now, keeps pushing more Star Wars shows and continually bringing out Clone Wars characters because he just can't move on from Clone Wars stuff, so the vibes must be the same here, and I'm about to rant about how much Disney ruined Star Wars, right? Part 2, The Phantom Mousenace. Disney's acquisition of Star Wars was good, and pushing out all these Star Wars shows is fine. Stop saying that Star Wars is just content slop now. Star Wars has always been a product, always been a merchandising, money-making first empire inventing goofy-ass names for random background characters who are running around with ice cream makers and never had a single line in any movie. Andor is phenomenal. The Mandalorian is incredible. Obi-Wan Kenobi gave Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen some actual meat to work with instead of...
Chancellor Palpatine, Sith Lords are our speciality.
You're so beautiful.
My boat.
And yeah, I'm gonna say it, I thought The Acolyte was pretty damn good! Come at me! Do you know how long we waited for live-action Star Wars TV? Shows with original characters and concepts set in this vast universe where they could do so much with it? And now we get some genuinely good and halfway decent ones and people want to complain, oh, there's too much Star Wars! How dare we have more good things that we can quote and celebrate? And hey, Book of Boba Fett was just meh, really it's Mandalorian Season 2.5, and I haven't watched Ahsoka or Skeleton Crew, but I haven't heard anything particularly egregious about them. Sure, there's stuff I could complain about, things I don't like or find annoying, but nothing so bad as for me to say, ugh, can we stop with the Star Wars? Were people saying that about the expanded universe? Because you know Star Wars stuff has never stopped being made. Comics and novels and video games and RPGs and all this stuff that has always been around, creating new characters and lore and exploring the themes of the franchise. Or were we bemoaning that too? The demonic mouse that is releasing a slurry of content, this vile, monstrous abomination that you want to hate on and claim ruined Star Wars? It's a phantom! A specter! It isn't real! Disney is a corporation that owns the biggest media franchise in the world and, to the shock of everyone, decided to release more media around it! My problem is not that people complain about Star Wars stuff. This video is me complaining about Star Wars stuff. I just get really annoyed that people have started hating on the very idea of releasing shows or them doing stuff with the thing they own. Especially when I am a fan of several franchises out there that companies are just sitting on and doing nothing with. Yeah, I'm the Power Rangers / Stargate / Blake 7 fan, and let me tell ya, it sucks that the things I really like are effectively dead, with our best hope being possible reboots instead of continuations of the things I enjoyed. Yeah, let it actually get released and then you can talk to me about how it came back. They've been announcing Youngblood movies for decades, so you're not gonna see me saying, stop making Star Wars, there's too much Star Wars or whatever, sorry. That being said, Part 3, Duel of the Fandoms. I think part of the problem when it comes to arguments about Star Wars boils down to a conflict in what Star Wars fans want out of the franchise. I see it most exemplified in how people talk about the Clone Wars and various pieces of non-movie media, or in regards to the sequel trilogy and how people talk about it. One side of Star Wars fandom wants, for lack of a better term, the spiritual, the philosophical, the parts of Star Wars that are about the message. Luminous beings are we, fear leads to anger, and anger leads to hate, the greatest teacher failure is, etc. A lot of the plot points, or even some of the logical decisions, don't matter as much as what you get out of it. The lessons that are taught, how these characters interact with each other, and how they build the future or view the past. The other side of the fandom cares less about the themes of Star Wars and more about the story of Star Wars. To them, Star Wars is a vast universe full of politics, battles, wars, negotiations, alien cultures, and various players who practice magic or smuggle for criminals or join/battle mighty empires. They want to see the next chapter, see what exciting new characters will come about, who will fail in their missions and who will succeed, but especially if they've grown attached to some characters, to see them fall so far is unsatisfying and insulting after the journeys they saw them go through. But regardless, they want to see the story unfold, and if any characters they grew to love before are back and helping out the new characters. While I find myself leaning towards the former camp, the truth is that Star Wars is both. As with the Force itself, it's about balance. Your message means nothing if your story is crap, and your story is uninteresting without the message. And I think the thing that's bothering people about all the Star Wars shows is that they have been leaning more towards one side, the story, than the other. Introduce a character in one show, give them a spin-off. Grab a familiar character from the movies, they get their own show. More story, more lore, another chapter. But while it's good to see them and the show itself is entertaining and fun and enjoyable, it doesn't have the same meaning to it that the original movies had. If you're having trouble understanding this divide, it all comes down to how you feel about the lightsaber. Are you with the writers who say, this weapon is your life, and a Jedi's weapon should be treated with more respect? Or are you the type who'd toss that tube of junk away because wars not make one great? Some will argue that The Last Jedi is all meaning, but a bad story. That is the next chapter for several of these characters' arcs, it doesn't work or betrays what came before. Some will argue that Force Awakens is a good story, but has no meaning. It's about continuing the next chapter and filling it with references and callbacks. The continuity is maintained, but you don't get any message from it like you have before. Now, I don't agree with those assessments, especially not for Last Jedi, but that's where the divide is coming in. Why some people are just not getting anything out of the Star Wars shows, while others are so glad to see continuations of the things they love. Or they're just making hourly videos where they scream that the wokes ruined their childhood, but I feel like those are an outlier. Part 4, Journey of the... Where are you going with all this, Linkara? This isn't a video essay. Get to the damn review already. Yes, I'm getting to that. I'm doing all this because I'm trying to explain why Rise of Skywalker doesn't work. Why it fails both sides of the fandom. As the next chapter of the saga, it's a betrayal of the characters and a failure to continue their stories. For the philosophical side, its themes are muddy, underbaked, and frustrating. And it left such a bad taste in everyone's mouths that it has tainted the views of the rest of the franchise. Rise of Skywalker was such crap that it's clear that any Disney-related Star Wars project can only be crap in people's eyes. The foundation of all Star Wars is the movies. There would be no Star Wars without them. This franchise's most important part is the films. That's what defines the eras, that establishes the universe. That is the thing that we all love. So when the films fail, it hurts everything else. I hated the prequels so badly that I never wanted to see anything prequel related afterwards. People hated Rise of Skywalker so badly that a lot of people don't want to see more Star Wars stuff. At least not for a time. I have been here these last 2.5 decades of Star Wars fandoms and popular opinions. I remember how people were so excited for the sequels, to get the franchise out of George Lucas's hands. I was one of them! I saw people demonizing acclaimed writers and directors and producers, people who have more than proven themselves time and time again, get continually crapped on because they worked on these movies or were associated with them. People take these goddamn Space Wizard movies so seriously that I've had some weirdo emailing me for 5 years anytime I so much as mention Star Wars so that he can call me slurs and rapidly hate on a film he didn't like, but I did. So when one of these movies sucks that bad, it damages the brand badly, more so than any TV show or comic ever could. And that's why I've had to focus all these thoughts, give this little video essay chapter-esque intro before we even think about the comic we're here to discuss. Because we shouldn't be here to discuss it! Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn, and I can't believe this is actually happening. I didn't think we'd be here like this. The comic adaptation of Rise of Skywalker was supposed to come out in 2020, but then the pandemic hit and it was canceled. Just completely canceled. Not happening, not holding off. And hey, who would expect it to be released years later? After all, what would be the point? The movie was critically lambasted, and releasing it a year afterwards as they tried to figure out how to operate during the pandemic felt like less of a priority, so better just scrap it entirely. In 2021, IDW released that shorter, more kid-oriented adaptation of it. The same kind they've done for all Star Wars movies. And while people suggested I just do a review of that, it felt unfair. All the other adaptations got a chance to tell their story in multiple issues. Sometimes they screwed up parts of it, but they still had multiple issues for pacing, for including dialogue and scenes that didn't make it into the movie, or maybe changing something based on an original screenplay, whatever. To go after an abridged adaptation felt wrong when all the other reviews I did covered the full things. But I thought, hey, come 2028 for the 20th anniversary of the show, maybe then I'd review that comic. Close it out, or even do a review of the movie itself, just so I had something for the full sequel trilogy. And then November 20th, 2024, I got the news. Somehow the comics returned. Why? Why now of all times? What event could make us want to revisit a piece of media about an evil force returning when we thought we were done with them and reawakened their stupid fascist? Okay, wow, I answered my own question. God damn it, Anton York, our true 45th president. Why couldn't you be here instead? But however we got here, we're here now.
Here we go again.
We have to relitigate these movies. Gotta once again get into arguments about this friggin' franchise. We'll try to focus on just this movie, but I know in the comments it's gonna be all ranting and raving about every part of this franchise that we like or dislike. And I get to read them all because I made the stupid decision 17 years ago to read every comment, and I'm not popular enough to have thousands per video that would prevent me from doing so. So yeah, Rise of Skywalker, J.J. Abrams back helming this one. Now I disagree with anyone who says that J.J. Abrams is a bad director or even a bad writer, but he's kind of like Brannon Braga of Star Trek fame. If you pair them with someone good, they amplify the writing and make it stronger. But you pair them with someone terrible, and you get bullcrap justifications for ridiculous, stupid contrivances. The Force Awakens was originally written by Michael Arndt and rewritten by Abrams and friggin' Lawrence Kasdan. Arndt's credits as a screenwriter, while small, are not unsubstantial, winning an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay and being behind the beloved Toy Story 3 and the second Hunger Games movie. Kasdan, I doubt, requires an introduction, but as a reminder, the co-writer of the friggin' Empire Strikes Back, and a sizable list of writing credits alongside that. Conversely, Chris Terrio, the co-writer of Rise of Skywalker, is the guy who did a rewrite of Batman v Superman Giant Monsters All-Out Attack, as well as Justice League. And before fans of Batman v Superman bite my head off, you've got to admit, based on that movie alone, would he really be your first choice to cap off a trilogy to an all-ages franchise? Especially ones that are going to require extensive care because of creative decisions to alter course from where the previous movie had been going? And to be fair, Terrio also won an Academy Award himself. But for Best Adapted Screenplay, meaning he was mostly working off of already existing source material for it. Abrams certainly deserves blame for the ball dropping like this, but let's not pretend that he's solely responsible when he had already proven before that he could deliver a good Star Wars movie. Arguably produced 2 good Star Wars movies if you include Star Trek 2009. Honestly, the thing that shocks me more than anything else is that there was no actual plan for these movies. I kind of assumed they had a planned direction for everything. After all, when you spend many billions of dollars buying something that already has a bit of a reputation behind it because of critical reactions to the last movies made for it, I thought you'd be very careful how you do the 3 sequel movies. But no, if they had a plan, they never bothered to alter the plan as they went along. Because instead, if Rise of Skywalker was where generally it was supposed to go from the original plan, yeah, it's kind of a lousy plan. And even forgetting that, there's plenty in this movie that feels like it exists solely to undo The Last Jedi, to placate its worst haters. And I need to be clear here, I don't mean the people who were like, I have substantial problems with the character direction they took Luke Skywalker, or I strongly disagree on Holdo's decision to withhold the plan from Poe. I mean, Rose Tico is Satan incarnate, and she better not have more lines than Luke's ghost, and I'm gonna set fire to her action figures, because that's what a normal person does! But no, by all accounts, there was no plan. Apparently each movie they were just flying by the seat of their pants on what they were doing, maybe working with the previous director to make sure that they could set up for the next one. And then something happened. Colin Trevorrow was dropped as writer and director. Abrams was back, Chris Terrio writing it. Now, I did read the Duel of the Fates script before this, and it is better than Rise of Skywalker. It still has a lot of problems, in my opinion, but not nearly as many as Rise. For one thing, while we can criticize the addition of a past love interest for Poe Dameron in this movie, presumably so he has a case of the not gays for Finn, Duel of the Fates was worse by trying to have a romantic relationship between him and Rey, a character who he has shared all of 10 seconds of screen time with so far. If you're curious about it, not only is there the script itself available on archive.org, but there is a fan webcomic adaptation of it. No, I will not review it. I don't review fan works. They're passion projects for no money, not a product meant to be sold to us by a corporation. Duel of the Fates would not have been great, but it still would have been less disappointing and frustrating than Rise of Skywalker. And while we can certainly point the finger at a person being responsible for the movie, let's recall that films are a collaborative process, especially ones owned by the Walt Disney Corporation. Putting the blame on one person is counterproductive and just invites hate campaigns. That being said, regardless of who did it, I can lay most of the problems with this film down to a single creative choice they made. And we're going to talk about it pretty quickly because it happens pretty much at the start. Let's dig into Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker comic adaptation, and finally put this sucker to rest. 5 issues and we're this deep into the video. You really think I'm going to look at the covers in detail? They're all fine. Issue 2 is the most boring. The door's open. Let's go. We begin, of course, with the opening crawl. Exactly the same as the movies, because it would be really weird if they didn't have the same one after so long. The dead speak! The dead are podcasting! The galaxy has heard a mysterious broadcast, a threat of revenge in the sinister voice of the late Emperor Palpatine. And here it is! This right here, this single creative decision is what doomed this movie. Palpatine is alive and he is the villain again. And we're just telling you that in the opening crawl. Actually, they revealed it in Fortnite. No, shut up. No, they didn't. You know what happened in Fortnite? There was an in-game event, some John Williams score, the Millennium Falcon takes off, and then a sound clip of Palpatine says 5 short sentences that basically amount to, "Time for revengeing!" Everyone calls it a speech, but I've seen drill tweets that were longer than this. There's no new information here, nothing so essential to get outraged over like so many were. Like, even if you want to say, oh, but this confirms that Palpatine is alive, I have to stare at you in confusion because that implies that the Star Wars universe doesn't have audio editing software that could have just copied and pasted the whole thing together. Forget about the, oh, this important message happened in Fortnite and not the movie critique. There is nothing to be outraged about. No, the problem is the goddamn opening crawl just told us that, out of nowhere, Palpatine is alive and a major player in this story. Some have argued that it doesn't matter if Palpatine is revealed when he is because, well, he was in the trailers. Everyone already knew Palpatine was coming back. Yeah, but how many people are going to be watching the trailers first in, say, 10 to 15 years? Kids who are seeing these movies for the first time. The next generation of fans who are just working their way through it. 2 sequel movies where we're focused on Kylo Ren, the First Order, barely a mention of the Emperor, and then just boom! Palpatine's alive, just FYI! Hell, forget kids. Some might not see this until they're adults and be even more confused going from one to the next. The narrative flow is screwed with because of this. It suddenly becomes about Palpatine's return instead of it being a revelation later or a natural flow of the story. Even when the prequels were coming out, they didn't just reveal in the first movie, Palpatine and Darth Sidious are the same guy. They treated it like it was a natural development in the final chapter versus just putting in the text crawl, Senator Palpatine is a Sith Lord manipulating everyone around him, because the movies are supposed to be enjoyed forever, not just as the culmination of trailer hype. It's why I asked during my reviews of the prequel movies if, as little kids, the reveal of Palpatine was a shock to you. And for many, it was! Seriously! Because they'd never seen Star Wars before! And they'd never seen the trailers for it either! But here, Palpatine's back! He's the main villain again! Almost every hugely terrible decision of this movie can be traced back to the choice to bring back Palpatine and have him be the final boss. It's maddening how stupid this was. Abrams apparently said that he decided to make Palpatine the villain for this one because he had been the villain for the first 6. Wrong! Palpatine may have existed in the universe, but he was the main villain for 2 previous Star Wars movies, Revenge of the Sith and Return of the Jedi. Just because they're working behind the scenes does not mean they are the main villain of a movie. If they were, they'd actually be confronted by the heroes, or the resolution of the plot involves them being defeated or leaving to fight another day. Palpatine is a plot point for a sequel. He's General Zod showing up in the first Superman movie to set up the second. Just because he's there doesn't make him the main villain. Episode 1's main villain, the Viceroy, or just the Trade Federation in general. Episode 2, Count Dooku. Episode 4, Tarkin and arguably Vader. Episode 5, Vader. Episode 7, Kylo Ren. Episode 8, Kylo Ren. Hell, it's debatable if Palpatine's even the main villain for Episode 3, since the absolute final showdown of the movie is Anakin and Obi-Wan, not Yoda versus the Emperor. That was a page and a half of the script of me just ranting about this, and we're not even through the opening crawl yet. May the Force be with me, people, because I'm gonna need it! General Leia Organa dispatches secret agents to gather intelligence, while Rey, the last hope of the Jedi, trains for battle against the diabolical First Order. Okay, there's nothing truly wrong with that bit, but man, that is an awkward single sentence that takes up the middle of your exposition crawl, and it feels like a run-on sentence. This needed a better editor. Meanwhile, Supreme Leader Kylo Ren rages in search of the Phantom Emperor, determined to destroy any threat to his power. And that also seems like a longer sentence, but only because you could shorten it to, meanwhile, Kylo Ren rages. It's kind of his whole thing. We truly open on Kylo Ren doing as the crawl said, killing some unnamed randos in search of Palpatine. What was not revealed in the movie, or at least if it was intended to be, was not clear at all, was that the planet we see him doing this on is Mustafar. You know, where Anakin got crispy and Darth Vader built his friggin' castle. Hey, remember all those shots of Mustafar featuring a burnt-out forest with trees on fire and stuff? And before any of you start typing in the comments about how volcanic ash is actually great for plant life and soil and whatever, this is not about actual science here. For God's sakes, this is Star Wars, the galaxy of one ecosystem per planet. My point is visual language and film. What is the point of having this be Mustafar if it's not going to look like Mustafar? No wonder they don't explicitly say it is in the movie, because then we'd be scratching our heads why we bothered to come back to the volcanic magma rock planet if we weren't going to go to Darth Vader's castle or something. Hell, it'd actually make more sense to do that because instead, Kylo finds this triangular object inside of a stone box in the middle of this burnt-out forest, when instead, if this is Mustafar, it really should have been in Vader's castle. But hey, maybe it's budget, you know? We can't afford to build a set for Vader's castle for one short scene. Damn, if only they had made such a set for another movie a few years back. Whoops! 2 pages in, people! I'd say we have to speed this up, but you can see the damn timeline bar! The triangular object is a Sith wayfinder. I originally thought, and wrote, that this was a Sith holocron. If you're unfamiliar with it, a holocron is basically a big, inconvenient thumb drive that you can only activate through use of the Force. Jedi ones were octahedrons inside of cubes, Sith ones were pyramids or tetrahedrons. Which, you know, fair enough. As we know, pyramids are a sign of the greatest evil in history. Ancient Egypt! Feels like I should be using a different music cue in this episode, given this is already Star Wars and all. So is there some stupid expanded universe reason why the holocrons have different shapes if they're Jedi or Sith? Anyway, point is that somebody decided to leave this space GPS in a box in a forest outside of Darth Vader's castle, and Kylo Ren has found it and plugged it into his TIE interceptor. All while this goes on, Palpatine's Fortnite speech is relayed to us. And as I said, it is so unimpressive I will not be recounting it for you. The Wayfinder points Kylo to the planet Exegol, a dark, rocky world full of electrical storms and a giant underground lab in a cave or something with huge, massive statues of Palpatine? Some other Sith guys in robes? I don't know. This is one of those missed opportunities of the film. Given the immense resources that we're going to see that Palpatine has, why is he operating out of a friggin' cave? Well, given those statues, why don't we say that, I don't know, this is actually the first Sith temple? After all, we saw the first Jedi temple. We could use this as a cool contrast. Think of it. A Jedi temple is humble and simple and works within life, a tree. The dark side operates in a literal dark place, hollowing out a lifeless area and creates massive statues to exalted, powerful figures. But no, we learn nothing about this. He's here because it's dark and spooky. And yes, I know, Expanded Universe and the Rise of Skywalker Visual Dictionary talk about the history of this place and all that, but none of that is in the movie. All we get later is 3PO calling it the hidden world of the Sith, which frankly feels like any planet that you could hide. Given the long game that Palpatine played, Kamino is technically a hidden world of the Sith. But anyway, Kylo is here and the Emperor starts talking to him.
At last. Snoke trained you well.
I killed Snoke. I'll kill you.
My boy, I made Snoke. And good thing I did. The original designers were going to use an AI cookbook that called for bleach in the mix.
So here's the running tally we're going to have in this review. Things that exist only to placate people who hated The Last Jedi. Why is this here? Because people who didn't like The Last Jedi were mad that we never got some deep explanation of who Snoke was. I assumed he was just some powerful asshole Sith, because we see dozens of those jerks running around at any given time. And it didn't matter who he was, because it's not his story. It's Kylo's. And Kylo's story involved destroying his master because he thinks he's better than everybody else. It could have been anybody in that role, because he was always going to get cut in half at some point. But no, who was Snoke? Oh, somebody whom Palpatine genetically engineered. Because of reasons. The Emperor didn't want to just run things himself. He needed a proxy. The comic doesn't actually show it very well, but the movie actually showed us this Snoka-Cola right here to tell the audience that Palpatine created him. Which further begs the question of why Palpatine just has another Snoke sitting in a tube there. Did he get a buy one, get one free coupon and just decided to pickle the other one? Oh, but it goes a step further.
I have been every voice you have ever heard inside your head.
And this is another failure of the comic, because those lines are supposed to sound like Snoke and Vader to indicate that Palpatine has been whispering into his mind from before The Force Awakens, since indeed Force Awakens hinted that Kylo might be hearing Vader's voice in his head. Though we didn't need that explanation. Kylo was just egotistical and insane, and the audience didn't hear any voice after all. But yeah, the visual failure of the comic here. Why not put a transparent Snoke and Vader head next to those lines to indicate that's what's going on? But whatever. Palpatine says that the First Order was just a beginning and that he'll give him so much more. And we get to see Palpatine descend, his almost zombified body attached to some kind of weird crane apparatus. Yeah, I admit it, it's creepy, but it does make me wonder why he needs that instead of just like using the Force to float around or something. However, I'm of two minds about what happens next. I will grant you, this visual paired with this next line, a fantastic callback, are actually a pretty decent explanation for how Palpatine is alive.
I've died before. The dark side of the Force is a pathway to abilities some would consider to be unnatural.
Yeah, that's creepy as hell, even more so in the movie, implying there's some twisted, evil, Lovecraftian horror behind his resurrection. But at the same time, we don't actually see anything explicitly say how the hell he's alive. Sure, you can infer from the lab and all that it's like a clone body, but then why is his body so zombified? Did he hire the Jackal to do the cloning and this was the best they got after all the other ones melted or whatever? I mentioned Kamino before. You'd think Palpatine would be chomping at the bit to get all their cloning knowledge, since I'd say they did a pretty damn good job of it, because otherwise he looks like a moldy, rotten radish. He has a goddamn galactic empire at his beck and call and spent the economy on ridiculous super weapons instead of the thing that was actually going to keep him immortal. And mind you, this is only on the assumption that they cloned him and his soul transferred into the clone or whatever. And well, they have to have it be a clone that his soul traveled into, because otherwise his body frickin' exploded after Vader threw it over the edge! I mean, if he didn't explode, what the hell was all that energy being expelled when he fell down? I mean, I'm willing to play fast and loose with the physics of Star Wars because it's a movie about space wizards, but I draw the line at people exploding and then showing up not exploded. That needs a little more clarification.
I think it's very nice of you to give that dead woman another chance.
I mean, between this and Darth Maul, nobody who falls down a pit apparently can die. What, is Han Solo gonna show up in this too? I was kidding! And by the way, the Emperor transferring himself into a clone body happened in the pre-Disney expanded universe too. And frankly, it was kind of dumb there as well, but at least they actually figured out how to give him a body that wasn't messed up. But whatever, Palpatine tells Kylo that he can give them a new empire. The Final Order. His followers have somehow had enough resources to create a massive new army of Star Destroyers that will be Kylo's to command if he follows Palpatine's instructions.
Kill the girl. End the Jedi. Become what your grandfather Vader could not. Champion in any beach-related sport. But beware, she is not who you think she is.
Who is she? Granny Goodness! So periodically through this review, we're going to talk about what I feel should have happened, or how I think some of the plot points of this movie could have been salvaged. As I said, the big problem with this movie is Palpatine being the made bad guy. But let's say we want to keep him for this scene at least, because, hey, it's creepy. It gives Kylo access to a bunch of resources, all that jazz. Kylo arrives on Exegol, but he is pretty much silent the entire time. Let Palpatine do all the talking. Hell, make him be the power behind Snoke if you really need a goofy explanation for him. But then Palpatine does his lines, talking about how he's been gathering forces this entire time, preparing for his big return. And then he says to Kylo,
"You are truly amazing, and at my side, you will be the new Darth Vader."
And right there, Kylo quickly and unexpectedly stabs Palpatine, and we have some callbacks and mad ranting. Start with, "Look how old you've become," to echo how The Force Awakens began. Then continue with, "The new Darth Vader, let the past die.
I'm better than him. Calls back to his development in The Last Jedi and makes it clear he's truly this far gone. He will not share with anyone, and he's forsaken his Vader fanboying and is now the main villain of the sequel trilogy and is only interested in doing his own thing. Admittedly, his own thing will be conquest and destruction, but no one ever said Kylo was full of original ideas. We cut over to the planet Agen Kloss, where Rey is training in a jungle. Since we're not in a movie, we get narration from her that gives us some more insight. Now, I hated this in The Last Jedi comic because it took things that were subtle, minimalistic, or simple and just assumed the audience was stupid. It was explaining Luke's thoughts in such detail so as to spell out everything and ruin the visuals. Here, it doesn't salvage the movie, but at least it gives us some more details than we had that might be something interesting. I may not yet be able to sense the Jedi who came before, but I can feel that this place has known Jedi before me. The stench of their beer kegs from the legendary Padawan frat parties still lingers in the air. Of course, I already knew that. Leia told me that Master Luke trained her here many years ago. Okay, this one's a bit of a stretch, but I do recall people being mad about Leia using the Force to fly through space in Last Jedi when she didn't seem to be doing any real Jedi stuff until then. It was a minor complaint, some just saying their problem was that it looked silly or it caused mixed emotions because it wasn't too long before then that Carrie Fisher had died and the fake-out felt bad, but I'm counting it. Maybe Leia wasn't interested in becoming a Jedi. We didn't need to see her undergoing training. Anyway, I will grant the comic that these mirroring shots look good, and we get the reveal of this training here instead of just later in the movie, plus we get this narration to set it up. She hasn't really told me any details about how it went. Something about accidentally making him even shorter for a stormtrooper when she first tried out a lightsaber. And she never called herself a Jedi. Not that I've heard anyway. Still, she's the master I have now. She was a lot easier to carry on my back than Luke was, at least. This isn't quite how things went in the movie. After the conversation with Palpatine and Kylo, instead of cutting to Rey, it cut to the Millennium Falcon getting a secret message from another Resistance member who revealed that there was a spy in the First Order providing intel. This in turn led to a space action scene with TIE fighters chasing the Falcon as it did light speed skipping. Like with the Palpatine unnatural thing, I'm of two minds here. While I think it is better editing-wise to go from the villains talking about Rey to actually showing her, I think it's a mistake to cut the sequence entirely like the comic does. Yes, I think the lightspeed skipping was kind of bad. There's no explanation in the movie how the TIE fighters were able to follow the Falcon after the last movie made such a huge deal about tracking through hyperspace. I read it's like established hyperspace lanes or some bullcrap, but whatever. But more importantly, it's a chance to see these characters hanging out together and acting as friends with even a subtle bit of growth for Finn, who was barely able to handle the gunner seat on the Falcon in Force Awakens, but now works like a pro. And Lord knows Finn needed everything he could get in this film. It's also where they established the spy subplot that we'll return to later. Still, I get why the sequence was cut. See, I made a big deal in the intro about how I felt a proper adaptation deserved the room to tell its full story, except for some reason the adaptation is only 5 issues while Force Awakens and Last Jedi had 6. So of course stuff is getting condensed or cut when the other 2 movies had room to breathe. And I do wonder how much of this changed from the original announcement, as the writer of the adaptation, Jody Houser, said in an interview that they were going to include material that was cut from the film. Does that just mean the narration? In any case, Rey suddenly has a flashback to her parents' ship leaving Jakku, and it distracts her, allowing the training droid to get a few shots off on her. Oh, another thing was cut. When we first see Rey in the film, she's hovering in the air, lifting a bunch of rocks around her and trying to hear the voices of other past Jedi. This is kind of foreshadowing for the ending. Except I'm confused because, was that always a thing? Was every Jedi we saw before constantly hearing past Jedi poking them in the brain to say, hey, you're doing it wrong? Because I feel like I understand Anakin's fall to the dark side more if he had 1,000 generations of space monks bothering him constantly. In any case, she admits she got distracted to Leia. Yeah, Leia's inclusion here, done via unused footage from the last 2 movies. This was a mistake. It's an understandable mistake, but it's a mistake nonetheless. It sucks when you lose an actor, especially someone as important and wonderful as Carrie Fisher, but it happened. Trying to shoehorn Leia in despite the fact that she has nothing to do because she's all B-roll doesn't work and just makes it awkward. And they try to have her death matter in the plot, but it just becomes even more unnatural than Palpatine's Sith powers. In my opinion, her character should have died between movies, maybe open with her funeral. Or maybe she dies right at the beginning, making some big, grandiose send-off, I don't know, but this doesn't work. Hell, you could incorporate her death into the character arcs at the start, people feeling lost without her, Lando needing to
step up and take charge now that Leia's gone, and he could fulfill her role. Maybe Kylo isn't aware of her death because he's so closed off from empathy anymore, and if you're going to do the redemption arc, learning that he's so full of hatred that he didn't even see her death happening in the Force. Hell, that'd be a nice parallel to Luke not knowing about Han's death in Last Jedi. It's like with Star Trek Beyond. When Leonard Nimoy passed away, they killed Prime Timeline Spock off screen, but they made that death have significance for Kelvin Timeline Spock's character and his motivations. It was far more respectful than trying to shove some leftover footage into the movie where she stands around saying barely anything. In any case, the distraction in the movie was caused by Kylo trying to communicate with her, I think via Vader's burnt helmet, and it just led to a bunch of flashbacks from the other two sequel movies. Yeah, honestly, good change for the comic. I hate this plot, but going back to the ship flying off makes a lot more sense for where said plot is going. She tells Leia that she's just not feeling like herself, and we get some of her vision of Dark Rey and her evil double-bladed red lightsaber. In any case, she hands over Luke's lightsaber to her. I will earn your brother's saber. One day. It's yours already, frankly. You broke it, you bought it. I'm disappointed that she's still using Luke's lightsaber. I don't need to see her rebuild it, plenty of time has passed between movies, but she gets her own only at the very end. This contributes to a big problem in this movie. Lineage, and whose story this is. If I was doing this movie, she would not have the lightsaber anymore. It'd still be busted in half. She doesn't have her own lightsaber for the majority of the film. She's relying upon her old staff or something like it. For now. We'll most definitely be coming back to this later, but the big issue is that she is saddled with the baggage of other characters instead of letting her be her own person. We cut over to a meeting of the Resistance leaders, where it's established here the presence of the spy, also cutting out a brief kind of humorous exchange between our principal leads that helps build their friendship. We've decoded the intel from a new First Order spy, and it confirms the worst. Somehow, Palpatine returned.
This has made a lot of people very angry and been widely regarded as a bad move.
I mean, there it is, people! The line that is still so thoroughly mocked. Not to pick on poor Chris Terrio, but it's few writers I can think of who have written two things that have become the internet's mimetic punching bag for major releases.
Save Martha!
Somehow Palpatine returned.
I mean, sure, as a critic and connoisseur of bad media, I can mock Tommy Wiseau or Neil Breen or David Dakota or any number of Z-grade, low-budget writers and directors for the insanely terrible lines in their films, but it's something else when it happens in movies that cost more money than I will ever see in my lifetime. How did Palpatine return? I don't know, somehow. Whatever. Look at poor Oscar Isaac. That's not the look and gestures of a man who just found out the evil space wizard who ruled the galaxy has somehow found a way to conquer death. This is an actor who is forcing himself to say a line they know is awful. It's not even the worst Star Wars line ever, of course. It's just a blanket statement that they don't know how he did it. But Palpatine is alive again, but they're not even going to try to bother to properly explain it. It's no longer about the First Order or Kylo Ren or everything we've been building up to for this trilogy. It's about the nostalgic villain of the past coming back. And doing so has derailed the plot because now this is what it's about. Somehow Palpatine returned. And it ruined everything. The Resistance can hardly believe it, but then they do. Dark science, cloning, secrets only the Sith knew. The 11 herbs and spices of necromancy. Poe explains that his followers have been secretly building the largest fleet in history, called the Final Order, and in 16 hours they're going to strike all free worlds. The Emperor and his fleet have been hiding in the unknown regions on a planet called Exegol. The planet does not appear on any star chart, but legend describes it as the hidden world of the Sith. Gonna turn out that 3PO just hasn't run a software update in like 2 decades, and there's a whole tourism industry to the place. Hotels are booked for the next 5 months. Rey recognizes the name Exegol, and the art makes it look like she's some kind of gremlin or sneaking around when in the movie she just ran normally. Heading to the Jedi text she brought back with her from Ahch-To. Palpatine's been out there all this time, pulling the strings. Always in the shadows, from the very beginning. You want to know why bringing Palpatine back ruined everything? This right here. Even forgiving the revelations we get later, which also messed everything up, making Palpatine the main villain completely and utterly demolished the sequel trilogy. People have said that there's no coherency between the 3 movies, no overarching theme or reason to exist. I disagree. The purpose of the story is neo-Nazism, the return of fascism, and the angry misanthropes who are taken advantage of to bring it about, in particular Kylo Ren. They fetishize the bad guys, believing themselves to be establishing order and worshipping the symbols of strength, trying to emulate them in their own way. The end result of that is either self-destruction or indeed the return of that fascist state. It was reflective of the world at the time in the lead-up to Trump's first administration. And don't assume I'm talking out of my ass here when it comes to Star Wars being a loose allegory to real-world events. Lucas envisioned the original trilogy, or at least its original treatment, as being something of a Vietnam War allegory. A small force in a jungle eventually overpowering a technologically advanced invader. The prequels? The rise of a fascist state, but especially in light of 9/11, Bush-era politics by the time Revenge of the Sith rolled in. There's a Twilight Zone episode called He's Alive. It's a story about a neo-Nazi who at first is ridiculed by the neighborhood he preaches in. A mysterious figure starts giving him advice, how to actually pull off the things he's been trying to do this whole time. The neo-Nazi's words start having an impact and people are being swayed, and he's crossing more and more lines as he goes on. Things get pushed to a head until it's revealed that that mysterious figure, ZOMG, it was Hitler all along! Except it's not. At least not like an actual physical return of Hitler. It's a metaphor for his ideology and rhetoric and methodology surviving and going on. When the neo-Nazi is killed, the Hitler spirit moves on to find another to take his place, since it can always happen again.
He's alive because through these things, we keep him alive.
The sequel trilogy is the same as the Twilight Zone episode. Except in the case of Rise of Skywalker, no, it actually is Hitler, and he's totally come back from the grave to be Hitler again, which is just stupid and undermines the broader idea about evil resurfacing. Is it about angry youth wanting to burn everything down so that they're the only ones standing and no one can oppose them? No, it's just Palpatine all along. Do we address the issues that actually push someone into worshipping a fascist state or rejecting positive figures for dark, sinister ones? No, it's just Palpatine all along. Do we explore the loneliness, the sense of rejection and betrayal by authority figures we trusted and finding solace only in each other, but in turn the toxicity of those we would embrace being used to justify more pain, more violence, more self-defeating evil? Nope! It was Palpatine all along! He's the bad guy, not Kylo! Just kill Palpatine and it's all okay! We just have to keep killing Hitler, guys! One of these times it'll stick and then space fascism will never come back again! And don't try to argue, but it's a movie for children! Because even if that was true, it's not. All ages does not mean for kids. It's a bad lesson for children. You can't just say, the bad guy was defeated and then everything was good forever, except for if the one bad guy comes back. Can you believe we're still not even halfway through the first issue? Rey tells Leia that Luke was searching for Exegol, but determined that you need the Sith Wayfinder to get to it. To stop what we both feel is coming, I need to finish what Luke started. Find Exegol, find the Emperor. No. What? Why not? Oh, I don't have a reason I could explain, because I'm just stock footage, just me saying the word no without any explanation why finding Palpatine would be bad. It's not even like you said you were going alone or something. Rey says that she's gonna go with or without her blessing. It's what you would do. You didn't wait until you were ready to fight the Empire. You couldn't. There was far too much at stake. That is, in fact, demonstrably false. Yeah, Leia fought the Empire, but she didn't go off half-cocked. That was Han and Luke's thing. Leia made sure the Death Star plans were safe. She didn't try to hide on board the Star Destroyer and hopefully sneak onto the Death Star to blow it up herself. She stuck around on Hoth to try to get people to safely run away from the Empire. She told Luke to run away from Vader instead of handing himself over in Return of the Jedi. And probably the thing that makes this an attempted counter of The Last Jedi, she scolded Poe for destroying the Dreadnought at the cost of so many lives, and then stunned him when she woke up so they could, once again, run the hell away and live to fight another day! Yes, she fights the Empire, she is brave and willing to take risks, but acceptable risks. Plans that minimize casualties and surrounded by enough forces and supplies and preparation to give them a fighting chance. She's not just heading off alone on a wild goose chase. Except maybe to free Han from Jabba's palace. That was probably the biggest risk she ever took, mostly alone, and that ended up going to 5 kinds of hell. Rey promises to come back and continue learning about the Force. I only hope I'm here for you when you do. They're running out of shots of me to use. This is a stunt double in silhouette right here. Rey is preparing to take the Falcon to the Desert of Pasana, the Forbidden Desert in the actual movie, when Poe and Finn announce they're coming along. I need to go alone. Why? Right, alone with friends. No, it's too dangerous, Finn. Why? All you know is that the trail to find the Sith Wayfinder went cold on Pisana, and that was however many years ago. What makes you think there's anything particularly too dangerous for your friends who are also Resistance members? And this is assuming you find anything at all. I mean, you'll probably find something because it's a movie and in-universe the Force is with you. Though that does make me tilt my head and wonder why the Force wasn't with Luke when he was doing this. Did he just say he looked for Exegol and instead went to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters, aka went to the strip club? Chewie, BB-8, and 3PO say they're coming too. Maybe this is what family really is. The people who don't let you go. The people who run toward danger with you. This is a very good sentiment and a good line for this movie and for Rey's character arc. Which is why the actual ending of the movie is complete nonsense, and I hate it, and I will explain my better idea for an ending when we get there. Leia gives Rey back the lightsaber. Never be afraid of who you are. And this is also a good line, honestly, both for the revelations that will come, or if they had stuck with her being nobody. But I have to say, why does the comic version of Leia look more dead-eyed and fake than the one in the movie? The comic cuts and changes some minor things. It cuts out 3PO's brief goodbye to R2, definitely a mistake, and changes one of Rose's few scenes. In the movie, Finn invited Rose to come along on the journey, which she should have, but says that Leia asked her to stay behind and look over old Star Destroyer specs to try to find a weakness in the Exegol fleet. I don't know why she'd be able to uniquely do that, since I feel like in the 20-plus years since the original trilogy, the Republic would have been looking over such things, given the Empire remnants still running around, and even still, given how a weakness in the Death Star caused it to go kablamo, I have to imagine Palpatine was suddenly very keen to overhaul any weak spots in the rest of his fleet, but whatever. Instead, in the comic, Rose doesn't even get a scene with Finn, the guy she spent the entire movie with last time, and implied that a romance was starting between them. Instead, Leia and Rose have the scene where we learn that she's in charge of the Engineering Corps, thus is responsible for all the Resistance ships, and she's tasked with finding a weakness in the Exegol fleet. Either way, we're adding Rose getting a massively reduced role to the tally. This one ain't a stretch at all. The racist, horrible threats to Kelly Marie Tran and backlash to Rose in Last Jedi is pretty well known, and it was bullcrap to sideline her like they did. Inexcusable. We get a splash page featuring Kylo reforging his helmet, the cracks glowing red. I actually like the look. Kylo is a damaged, fractured man, and I think it's visually represented here well. The comic goes a step further by including various images of his in each of the fragmented segments. Although that does make me wonder, after Kylo smashed his helmet in The Last Jedi, did he order some janitor to go clean it up and keep it in a box in case he decided to reforge it? The Sith were supposed to be finished, a specter left to rot in the past. But instead, I'm just gonna go around doing Sith stuff, I guess. Wait! It's part of the Sith that you're supposed to kill your master when you're more powerful than them. Instead of just killing Palpatine and taking over completely, I'll not kill him! It's totally anti-Sith then! God, I'm so smart! Yeah, he claims in the narration that he's gonna kill Palpatine, but I've seen this movie. It's nothing. The movie also used this to introduce us to the Knights of Ren, and they do nothing with them. Oh sure, they're around and they have a fight later, but they are nothing. I remember people being really excited to see the Knights of Ren ever since their mention in Force Awakens, and I just figured they were some bit of lore background naming. Recall that when A New Hope came out, the Clone Wars had no defining element to them. It was a conflict that just happened to be a thing that occurred in the past, and I thought the same thing for the Knights. Because I don't care about seeing a bunch of no-name assholes who followed Kylo Ren. I cared about Kylo Ren. You know, the villain of the story. I wanted to know what he was gonna do next. I kind of figured Kylo murdered them all, just like he did Luke's other students, frankly. In case you're wondering, the Knights were also present in the Duel of the Fates script. They did just about as much here, though maybe a couple had names, but they were just generic bad guys. And really, why would you give them names and personalities and characters and stuff? The movie is already overstuffed with underdeveloped characters. Introducing new ones we're supposed to be excited about isn't going to make the movie feel more complete. Anyway, Kylo tells the First Order generals that there's a spy in their midst. I sense unease about my appearance, General Hux. About the mask? No, sir. Sorry, sir, but from a certain angle, one of the segments of your mask looks kind of like a penis, and it made me giggle. One of the generals says that they shouldn't trust the cult on Exegol. Legitimate concerns and whatnot. And Kylo responds to this by choking him, lifting him up into the ceiling, and then announcing that he and his knights are going hunting for the Scavenger. Moving on to our next order of business, General Quinn up there has proposed a work-from-home system to cut down on unnecessary in-person meetings. Seeing this big council of First Order bigwigs is reminding me, Where is Phasma? There was an entire rivalry thing built up in Force Awakens and Last Jedi between her and Finn. Not heavily focused on, but focused on enough that should have had a proper final fight between them. And before you say, oh, but she fell into the decaying ship, yeah, well, she somehow survived Starkiller Base blowing up, so I think we can assume that she somehow managed to survive again. Hell, given a character we're gonna get later, we have an even bigger reason for her to show up. And you can make use of the deleted scenes from Last Jedi where Finn points out that she's an utter coward who turned off Starkiller Base's shields when threatened. Use that as a wedge point with her troops to turn the tide, cause a stormtrooper rebellion, or distract long enough for them to deliver the final blow and end her. But no, Phasma is just gone, giving Finn even less of a character arc in this movie. We cut to the planet Pisana as the Falcon arrives. We unfortunately cut a scene where 3PO talks too long about the Aki Aki Festival of Ancestors that's currently being celebrated by the locals, and everyone glares at him, leading to 3PO looking behind himself as if that's where they were looking. It's a legit cute, funny moment. Though I admit it's not like he talked annoyingly long about it when they're trying to focus on the search. It was like 2 sentences, and they stare at him as if he was reciting a 5,000-word Wikipedia article. Anyway, as they look around to try to ask the locals for information, there's a change from the movie to comic that definitely weakens it. In the comic, Rey just narrates about how different this desert is from Jakku, while in the movie, a child meets Rey and wants to know her family name, but she has to tell her she doesn't have one. Look, I hate what they do in this movie, but there's a reason the film is reminding us about her past and lack of familial connection. Not having that in the comic is a mistake. However, the comic does something a lot better than the movie next. Kylo Ren contacts Rey, which honestly feels like it shouldn't be a thing anymore. Snoke said that he was the one who bridged their minds together. It was suggested that projecting that far was an enormous strain. It's why Luke died, after all. Snoke probably was weakened by doing so, which is what made it easier for Kylo to hide that he was going to kill him. Or did Snoke just somehow make a permanent bridge between them? Which feels like it should have been even harder, but whatever. They're still talking to each other, and the comic demonstrates this by having the panel background fade from Pisana to Ren's ship. In the movie, it's...
Well, one of us is going to have to change.
Like, this is just such a goofy editing choice. Maybe if the ominous music had stuck around, but instead just that sting and Kylo in full gear just looking at her for a few seconds. It's comical. It could only have been more awkwardly hilarious if Kylo had been carrying a plate of chicken wings, a beer, and clad only in his shorts and a t-shirt that reads, "A Sith Happens." Because that's the kind of sting and edit that it is. Catching someone in an awkward moment that robs them of their menace. Even though he's just standing there normally. And I would hope that they would know this too, because they did a similar shot in Last Jedi when Rey turned to look and saw Kylo shirtless, and that was intended to be funny.
Palpatine wants you dead.
Serving another master?
No, I have other plans. And they're gonna be totally awesome plans. You'll see, I'm like Kyle Rayner in Infinite Crisis. My plans are legendary and will totally go somewhere. I offered you my hand once. You wanted to take it. Why didn't you?
Well, just spitballing here, but maybe it's because you were ranting about ruling the galaxy and destroying and killing and all that jazz. Rey says that Kylo was haunted by what he did to his father, and no, not really. I wouldn't call this so much as trying to placate haters of The Last Jedi, as much as it is the creators of the movie, Abrams in particular, I'd say, having a different vision for the trilogy starting from Force Awakens. It seems to be indicating that murdering Han Solo was supposed to be a bigger issue for Kylo, but Last Jedi took it in a different direction. Snoke said that the act split him, but it seems more like he just wanted to reject his parentage altogether and found a kindred spirit in Rey, who wanted to find her parents, but had no lineage. You could say that he wanted what she had, and she wanted loving parents like he had rejected. That being said, even though the interpretation of how Kylo rejected his parents has changed, the thing that seems to be consistent across the 3 movies is Kylo's desire for kinship with Rey. Whether that's a romantic desire on his part, or just a desire for a companion or friend who understands him is up to you, I guess, but the point is, Kylo says he's gonna find them and wants to turn her to the dark side. He also inexplicably reaches out with the Force, and somehow takes the necklace that the alien child had given her, transporting it across the galaxy. This is a bit iffy to me. Just seems like a power the Force shouldn't have, teleporting things across vast distances. The thing is, one of the strengths of the sequel trilogy is that it pushed the Force back into a more quasi-mystical role after midichlorians dragged the Force into something more scientific. But there is still a limit to this. The Force isn't supposed to be straight up, it's magic, we don't have to explain it. Still, it's not like some unforgivable sin, and its use later is decent setup and payoff with this. In any case, Rey realizes that with the necklace, Kylo can track them to where they are and tries to get our heroes away, but there were already First Order stormtroopers in the area, one of whom recognizes them. However, before he can call in reinforcements, a masked figure shoots a space crossbow into his face and pulls our heroes inside some kind of, well, tank, I guess, for lack of a better term. The figure pulls off his mask to reveal Lando, apparently having been told by Leia that they were coming. And Leia didn't tell our heroes about Lando because we didn't have stock footage of it. Lando explains that he and Luke had actually searched for Exegol together. They were tracing a Jedi hunter named Ochi, who apparently had some sort of clue that could lead to a Sith Wayfinder. And they knew that this guy had a clue to a Sith Wayfinder, not the actual Wayfinder, just a clue to one, because shut up. They found Ochi's ship, but no Ochi. The thing had been abandoned, and that's where the search went cold. Rey thinks Ochi looks familiar and wants to know where the ship is so they can search it again. Lando tells them where, Rey trying to encourage him to properly rejoin the Resistance. And here I thought my work was done. It has been peaceful here, but I suppose you can only forget for so long. Wait, does this imply he's been living on Pasana ever since they failed to find the Wayfinder? He looks to be as young as he used to be in this flashback panel. Also, was he playing space poker against these kids? I do wonder what Lando's role was originally supposed to be before all the rewrites. I remember him being involved in behind-the-scenes footage for Force Awakens in the build-up to its release, and obviously he wasn't going to be in the movie, but they had to have told him their plans long-term. Maybe it is just what we saw in this film, and they incorporated some of Leia's moments into his, since they naturally segued into each other, but I don't know. Our heroes swipe some speeders, cutting a moment from the movie where Finn asks Poe how he knows how to hotwire them, which seems like a stupid question. Poe is supposed to be the best pilot of the Resistance, an expert in flying pretty much anything. I imagine he would know the general mechanical layout of this stuff and how to hotwire them if need be for, say, making makeshift repairs in a pinch. Better question, why isn't Rey the one doing this since she was formerly a scavenger who also knew how to do this? I know the real reason. The movie is setting up something for later, but it's just awkward and head-scratching. In any case, the group are pursued by stormtroopers on motorcycles. That leads to one of the more mimetic lines of the film as they launch out stormtroopers with jetpacks. Oh, they fly now! They fly now? They fly now. Which, I don't quite understand why it got that much reaction. Yeah, it's not really that funny, but it's not groan-worthy. It's just, oh crap, stormtroopers have jetpacks now. It's not a terrible action scene either, and 3PO seems to have gotten over constantly being terrified and snooty like in previous films. Anyway, they reach Ochi's ship, which Rey recognizes, while they deal with most of the troops. The last jetpack trooper manages to blast them so they fall into quicksand, called sinking fields because, you know, Star Wars. As they fall down, Finn calls out, Rey! Rey! I never told you! And then they go under. Well, obviously he was going to say that he loves her. I mean, it's almost a cliche. He only joined the Resistance in Force Awakens to rescue her. His actions in Last Jedi were motivated by protecting her until he realized how important it was to fight the First Order regardless, and this movie has kind of brushed aside the relationship with Rose, and a bit not in the comic version implies he only wanted to tell her it when they were alone. So clearly it was just that he was in love with her. Nope! Yeah, J.J. Abrams said that he was going to tell her that he's Force sensitive. That's it. That he could feel her using the Force, so he was a Force user. That's what he wanted to tell her. As they were sinking into the sand, thinking that they were going to die, he wanted to tell her that he could lift rocks with his mind. 1, if that's true, why would he never bring this up before now? 2, why would he be bringing this up now? Why would that be your last words? 3, how would he even know that? 4, out of universe, why would you write it like that? What dramatic purpose is served by doing that? Especially since it doesn't go anywhere. Why would you tell people after the movie was out that that's what you were going for?
It just raises too many questions.
They locate a speeder in the tunnels that has a Sith symbol on it. I was going to question why 3PO suddenly knows so much about Sith symbols and stuff, but I suspect that it's info Luke had him study and learn about in the intervening time. But yeah, they suspect that the speeder was Ochi's, that Ochi didn't deliberately abandon the ship, but fell into the tunnels, and died as they find his remains. Bones. I don't like bones. They're coarse and they're rough and they get everywhere. Oh my god, I'm infected! How come I don't like bones hasn't become as mimetic as they fly now? That feels like a much dumber line, especially from someone who has shot at people before. Rey senses a dagger among the remains and can, in turn, sense all the killing and pain it's caused. 3PO can read the inscriptions on it. The runic language of the Sith. which has the location of the Wayfinder inscribed on it. If the location was supposed to be a secret, why would you write it on a dagger? Something that will get worn out as it gets used. And in a weird shape and very obvious way that would attract attention to it. Hell, why would you write it down at all? 3PO, however, can't tell them the translation. His programming forbids him from speaking translations of the Sith language, apparently passed by the Senate of the Old Republic. Which is interesting to me because I wonder how far back that rule was made. By the time of the prequels, the Jedi Council said the Sith had been extinct for a millennium. Sure, it's possible there was a rule passed down back when the Sith Empire was a thing, but it seems weird that he'd still be programmed with the language then. It's not like 3PO was 1,000 years old. Anakin built him out of spare parts he got on Tatooine, not like a standard model or something. Which, come to think of it, another critique of the prequels, Anakin programmed in thousands of languages into 3PO? Did he just order, like, a basic protocol droid software package from Space Micro Center or something? Anyway, the giant serpent who made the tunnels they're in shows up, after presumably to eat them.
Who shall we have one sign the likes of which even God has never seen?
But Rey can sense that it's injured. She uses the Force to heal its wounds, a much more reasonable use of Force powers than teleporting objects in my opinion. It's just transferring life energy. The problem is, the comic decides to take it a step into the absurd. And I fixed something broken before. The Kyber crystal from Luke's saber. The Jedi texts showed me how. And if I can use my life energy to repair a crystal... What? She healed the Kyber crystal that powered Luke's saber? That's how she fixed it? It's a rock! It's a pretty rock full of energy, but in the end, it's a rock! And you can heal it? I mean, by that logic, why can't she heal spaceships? Like, why did the comic even bother to include that info? The comic also fails to showcase that the serpent leaving is what opens up a tunnel for them back to the surface, though I'm assuming there was already one somewhere, otherwise how are they breathing? In any case, they think the First Order will be waiting for them back at the Falcon by this point, so instead they're going to try to get Ochi's ship up and running. However, Rey senses Kylo's approach and decides to confront him. Chewie is sent out to get her, but unfortunately, the Knights of Ren have caught up and attack. In the movie, we don't see his capture, but here we get a brief action montage of Chewie fighting back before being overwhelmed. And the Knights don't try to go into Ochi's ship after the others, because that would only make sense. We don't see how in the movie, Finn goes back out to get Rey and Chewie, spotting him being loaded onto a transport. Instead, we're just ending issue 1 with Kylo Ren's ship flying at Rey. She turns in the opposite direction, runs as fast as she can, and just as it's about to hit her, she leaps up and slices the thing's wing off. God, imagine if the scene had been in a good movie. Sure, Chuds would have continued their constant, "Oh, Rey is a Mary Sue" bullcrap, but man, what a cool moment it would have been. Why wasn't he firing at her? Was he out of ammo and just really hoping the girl with equal Jedi powers to him would just let that happen? Sure, you could say he doesn't want to kill her, but then why does he try to fly a ship right into her? But yeah, only now are we done with issue 1. Sure, the first issue is actually 32 pages instead of the standard 22 like the rest, but God, look at the friggin' timeline of this video and realize how much there was to talk about for only this first issue. And we haven't even hit a lot more of the awful, awful parts of this movie yet. Finn tells Rey about how Chewie is captured and they spot a transport vessel taking off. Rey narrates that she won't lose her family again and uses the Force to try to pull it back down. However, Kylo just walks off his destroyed fighter. Say what you will about the First Order, but the safety standards for their crashed ships is top-notch. Remember that Finn and Poe survived a TIE fighter crash in Force Awakens too. These things should win awards for how safe their cockpits are. Kylo narrates that he can feel Rey's anger and fear, wanting to see what happens when she's pushed. Which is more explanation than we got in the movie, where he suddenly just starts using the Force on the ship himself? Like, is he pushing it back up? Trying to pull it towards himself instead? I'd also remind you that we already did this scene in Last Jedi, and it was a much better scene at that, ending in Luke's lightsaber getting torn in half. This just looks kinda silly, especially with the dramatic music the movie keeps playing. Hey Finn, instead of standing there gormless like that, why not try to shoot at Kylo Ren while he's distracted? But no, instead of the ship getting ripped in half like the lightsaber, Rey suddenly shoots Force lightning from her hand that blows up the transport, supposedly killing Chewbacca. Hey, did you know that Force users can just accidentally shoot Force lightning? Like, is that something you have to actively be trying to do? You're exerting effort, feeling angry or afraid, and boom, you get zippy zappies from your fingertips. Important safety tip for future Jedi training. They don't have any time to mourn or be too horrified by what just happened, however, as the rest of the First Order forces are coming at them, so they have to flee in Ochi's ship. Despite just demonstrating that he can use the Force on a ship from a distance, Kylo makes no attempt to slow them or grab their ship or anything. We don't see their escape in either comic or movie, but the movie at least establishes that our heroes are hiding in an asteroid field before we look in on them. Rey is horrified by what happened, and we change some stuff around. Rey confesses to Finn that the power came from within her, but in the movie she says she had a vision of her and Kylo sitting on a throne for the Sith. In the comic, she doesn't say the same thing, but we see that actual vision here, though only her in the throne. Were there supposed to be two thrones, or was one in the lap of the other? And it's here where the comic does the correct thing narratively. In the movie, we cut back to the First Order flagship to reveal that Chewie is, in fact, alive. There was a second transport, and Rey just zapped some other one that was taking off. So, almost immediately ruining the drama for the audience and the reveal that he's alive. Or maybe test audiences just completely flipped out at supposedly killing friggin' Chewbacca like that, and they needed to move up the reveal before everybody walked out. But no, instead we stick with our heroes. They only have 8 hours left before the Final Order makes its move. Chewie had the dagger on him, so they don't have it anymore to be translated. However, 3PO points out that the inscription is still in his memory banks even if he can't translate it. And I guess just removing the image from his memory banks is impossible. As such, the only way to get the translation done is a complete redactive memory bypass, which Poe thinks can be done via a black market droidsmith he knows on the planet Kijimi. They also cut out Poe saying they have to do this despite him having had trouble on Kijimi before, because otherwise all that they've done would have been for nothing, leading to even 3PO bringing his hand in and willing to join in the effort. Yes, 3PO is comic relief, but he's still a character in the story, one of the few who is in all of them, so it sucks that the comic is cutting most of his moments. What's more, the comic also cuts out the revelation that the Knights of Ren are following them in their own ship. And it kinda needs that scene, since otherwise the comic doesn't explain how the hell Kylo Ren finds them again. They also find a droid on the ship, Dio, who doesn't really do much in the movie, but hey, new toy for the kids. But yeah, they go to Kijimi, where Poe is almost immediately found by this lady, Zori, in her gold and maroon outfit. Zori reveals that Poe used to be a spice runner, essentially a drug dealer, and he ended up screwing over his old crew when he left to join the Resistance. I know some people were mad about this because it broke some continuity established in expanded universe media about Poe's backstory, but as I said at the start, the movies take priority over anything else. Though it is pretty lame that even with all these various departments working together to keep this franchise consistent, they weren't communicating with each other. And it doesn't even matter anyway. This could have just been some old contact Poe had from a previous mission. Making him essentially a drug dealer in the past doesn't actually affect anything in the plot. Plus it adds yet another character who's barely gonna play a part in things, but provides a few bits of makes it easy for the characters. I've also seen it speculated that she's introduced here as a potential love interest for Poe, try to discourage Finn and Poe shipping. I'm iffy on that because it's not like any actual romance happens here. Plus, bisexual people exist. Anyway, Zori brings them to the true breakout character of this film, Babu Frick. I am actually shocked they got away with naming an alien in this all-ages franchise Frick. Sure, it's not an actual F-bomb, but close enough for Disney, I'd say. I kinda love him, too, because he's just this little gremlin puppet thing who's super positive. Point is, though, he explains that they can make him translate it, but only if they perform a complete memory wipe. All of 3PO's experiences will be erased. Which seems odd to me. Wouldn't erasing his memory also erase the memory of the dagger inscription and how to speak Sith? The comic leaves out Finn asking if R2 backs up his memory, with 3PO saying R2's data storage is notoriously awful. And Rey, who's the most sympathetic to droids out of all of them, has to ask the question, you know the odds better than any of us. Do we have a choice? Stupid question. I'm sure there's some expanded universe reason where it takes 3 weeks to do it, but why can't they just back up his memory right now? This is a black market droidsmith shop. You're telling me Babu Frick doesn't have a hard drive sitting around here? But no, basically Rey is giving 3PO the choice here. If this mission fails, it was all for nothing. All we've done, all this time. Plus it will wipe out all my terrible memories of pain and indignity that I have suffered ever since I was first built. Sign me up, Babu Frick! In all seriousness, this is a legit moment for 3PO. It carries a lot of weight for the character given his full history. And sadly, the comic leaves out the moment where he looks at our heroes and admits he's taking one last look at his friends. It's heartwarming and heartbreaking. Although the sentiment is a little hollow when you remember that in the sequel trilogy, he has barely spent any time with these people. Aside from this one trip, he's mostly hung out with Poe when he was trying to hijack a ship to further his insane plan in the last movie, and in this one, the rest of them have mostly tolerated him. 3PO has so many good moments in this, and if I have a regret for the sequel trilogy, aside from this movie, he and R2 should have been in more of it. Yes, I love BB-8, but if there's a single through line throughout the Star Wars movies, it is those two, and this film gives 3PO the most real character development he's had. And it's in service to a stupid plot point about a Sith dagger that's gonna get increasingly silly the more we see. Zori and Poe head up to be on lookout, and the comic cuts up the setup for their lines, that the First Order has been on the planet for a while now, in particular kidnapping children to turn into stormtroopers. Zori says she can't stand it here anymore and is planning to flee to the colonies using a stolen First Order captain's medallion, which apparently grants free passage through any blockade and landing privileges on any vessel. Man, it really says something when the original Empire had better security by at least requiring a password for entry. Any idiot holding this Beyblade apparently can be allowed to land on any ship. She offers Poe the chance to come with her, but he says he can't walk out on the war until it's over, though he admits he fears that it is. We sent out a call for help at the Battle of Crate. Nobody came. And one Wookiee dies and suddenly we're not the spark that will light the fire anymore, huh, Poe? Everyone is so afraid. They've given up. No, I don't believe that you believe that. Line needed a rewrite. I don't think that you believe that. I'm guilty of doing it too, but I'm a comic book reviewer on YouTube, not a massive movie expected to make $1 billion. They win by making you think you're alone. There's more of us than there are of them. A very good sentiment, especially needed as a reminder for the sometimes terrifying reality many of us find ourselves in. Why is she saying it to him? She's so scared that she's planning to run away, and he's the actual member of the Resistance. Shouldn't this be the other way around? They spot Kylo Ren's Star Destroyer arriving, and Babu Frick finishes the job, 3PO immediately reciting what was on the dagger. The Emperor's Wayfinder is in the Imperial Vaults at Delta 3-6, transient 9-3-6, bearing 3-2, on a moon in the Endor system. From the southern shore. Only this blade tells. Only this blade tells. Choking hazard. Call toll-free for warranty information. Void where prohibited. Rey suddenly looks at the Star Destroyer and can sense Chewie's alive and on board it. Oh, and we cut the scene where Rey realizes that she recognizes Ochi's ship as the one her parents left on back in the day. I'm sure that wasn't important or anything. Anyway, 3PO's memory is reset, so he introduces himself for the first time, and our heroes decide to see if they can free Chewbacca. Zori gives Poe her MacGuffin medallion, despite her dialogue in the movie making it clear that she despises Poe and is the one who wanted to flee, and he has done nothing to actually endear himself to her again, or make up for whatever happened between them. Because the comic injects what I presume is a deleted scene with Leia and Maz Kanata talking about how much it sucks to be one of the ones who waits to hear if a mission is successful. Leia also mentioning how they haven't really had any time to mourn any of the people who have died, and I'm like, clearly some time must have passed, right? I know the timeline is a bit wonky between Force Awakens and Last Jedi, but it really feels like there's been a time jump between Last Jedi and this movie. Maybe not a huge one, but enough that some hairstyles have changed, the repairs to the lightsaber, our heroes' general familiarity with each other, all that. Also, Leia's playing around with one of the medals from the end of A New Hope for some reason. I mean, I know the reason, we'll be getting to that later, but I mean, within the story of the movie, why she's doing it, I couldn't tell you. Anyway, our heroes land on the Star Destroyer and start looking for Chewie. Which way? No idea, follow me. Finn said that originally in the movie, not Rey, and either way doesn't make much sense. Finn is a former stormtrooper. While he's not going to know exactly where Chewie is held, he could at least be like, here, we'll go to the nearest brig and start from there. But no, instead they run into a pair of stormtroopers and Rey uses the mind trick on them. It's okay that we're here. You're relieved that we're here. Thank goodness you're here. Welcome, guys. I like that guy on the right. He's Marty, the mellow stormtrooper. They're directed to Chewie, but Rey suddenly senses where the dagger is and that they're going to need it, separating to go retrieve it. Poe and Finn retrieve Chewbacca, and there's a running firefight back to the ship. Rey retrieves the dagger and suddenly bridges with Kylo again, who's on the planet looking for her.
Rey, wherever you are, you're hard to find.
You're hard to get rid of. Me to any AI software that asserts that it can be helpful to me.
I pushed you in the desert because I needed to see it. I needed you to see who you are.
That was totally my intention. I totally allowed you to almost kill me by slicing my fighter's wing off. I totally won that.
I know the rest of your story, Rey.
Were you as disappointed as the rest of us, then? Poe is shot in the arm, and the group are quickly surrounded by stormtroopers to end issue 2. The way this is intercut is a bit different than in the movie, but pretty much conveying the same idea. Rey's confrontation with Ren while our heroes are captured. The comic cuts out Hux' superior, General Pride of the Hux Men. I don't care. Sometimes I just do jokes to amuse myself more than any of you. ordering our hero's executions, so it just starts with Hux telling the stormtroopers that he'll do it himself. However, when Hux is handed the gun, he shoots the guard instead and admits that he's the spy. And unfortunately, the comic cuts out another funny line.
I knew it! No, you did not.
So Kylo says that he never lied to Rey back in Last Jedi. Her parents were no one because they chose to be no one.
So what I told you was true. From a certain point of view.
No, shut up, clip I inserted in there myself. We'll break this all down in a few minutes, but we're almost there, people. The moment where this movie completely falls apart. Needless to say, this is the creators trying to cover their asses to retcon what we learned in Last Jedi. Kylo says that she remembers more than she thinks she does, and we get flashbacks of Rey's parents telling her that she needs to be brave and she'll be safe there, that Palpatine sent Ochi to find her. However, her parents refused to tell her where Rey was, so Palpatine ordered them killed. Damn, if only really powerful Force users had the ability to read people's minds or something! A pity that we never saw anyone who specialized in the dark side of the Force doing just that! Oopsie doodle! It's actually worse in the movie. Aside from there being no evidence that Ochi ever brought her parents back to Palpatine so he could at least try that, Rey's mother explicitly yells,
"She isn't on Jakku, she's gone."
Which, you know, you'd think this expert Jedi hunter might think, hey, that sounds like a lie. Maybe I should search Jakku just to be sure. But no, she says that and he stabs them instead.
You magnificent bastard, I read your book!
By the way, during this, Rey and Kylo have been dueling with their sabers across the Mind Bridge. It's visually interesting, but kind of nonsensical. Still, the fight leads to the pedestal holding the burnt-out Darth Vader helmet getting smashed, so Kylo realizes where she is. And now he's gonna be pissed that you damaged his collectibles, Rey! In the movie, Rey reunited with the droids and sent them off to join the rest of our heroes before Kylo arrives, but in the comic, they're just there with the others now. Hux leads them to the Millennium Falcon, taken on board after Pisana, and then say they need to blast him in the arm or else the rest will know he betrayed them. Finn shoots him in the leg instead, and asks why he's doing this. I don't care if you win. I need Kylo Ren to lose. Ugh, office politics, am I right? Kylo lands his new fighter? I mean, I guess he probably has some spares in the hangar bay where Rey is waiting for him. Why did the Emperor come for me? Why did he want to kill a child? And here we are, people. Up until this point, while there have been some serious issues with the film, you could argue that a lot of what I've brought up are nitpicks. That most people won't think that hard about them. That they're not that important in the grand scheme of things. But then we reach this point. And it was at that moment, me sitting in the theater on opening night, where all my enthusiasm for the movie plummeted to the ground, and I knew there was very little they could do to save it.
Because he saw what you would become. You don't just have power, you have his power. You're his granddaughter. You're a Palpatine.
Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you forever. Fuck yourselves. Go fuck yourselves, you fucks.
I'm still just in shock, even after all this time, that they thought that this was the right way to go. That this was what the sequel trilogy needed. After all the garbage takes about Rey from sexist chuds, after the beautiful job that The Last Jedi did of trying to say, no, she is not part of some lineage. We are not just repeating story beats from the original trilogy. She's her own person and is wonderful because great, talented, amazing people exist out there without any kind of inherited power. Rejecting the Nazi-esque ideas about superior bloodlines from your stupid Force bacteria, the creators decided, no, she is definitely special because she inherited power from a powerful bloodline. She is only great because she's related to someone with great power. We are just repeating the same story beat from the original trilogy of being related to someone evil. Some have said we didn't need a story about how a Jedi can be anyone, because the Star Wars universe already has tons of characters who are awesome Jedi with no specific lineage or noble family, for lack of a better term. The thing that I have to sadly keep reminding people, though, as I said in another Star Wars review, most people have only watched the movies. Most people will only see the movies. And as far as the movies are concerned, after the Jedi were wiped out in Revenge of the Sith, the only Jedi left were Yoda and Obi-Wan. Luke would become a Jedi, but is related to Darth Vader and that mighty Skywalker blood. And by the time The Force Awakens rolls around, all the Jedi that he was training are dead too. So now we have Rey and she is the Last Jedi. And in this movie, we discover she has a parental lineage to some other strong Force user. The majority of the audience either doesn't know about or doesn't care/watch the spin-off shows or books or comics or video games. The movies say there is only one Jedi left, and she's connected to a lineage. So unless the next trilogy follows that kid from Canto Bight in his journey to become a Jedi, the characters are just a continuance of some lineage, important because of their families, the divine right of kings. I mean, until it's revealed that that kid is actually the distant relative of Kit Fisto or something. And sure, maybe the prequels established Jedi existed elsewhere and could come from anywhere, but the storyline of the prequels does not follow all those other Jedi. It follows the Chosen One and the Teacher from the original trilogy. The other Jedi are basically background characters. The message that it sends is, sure, you could be a Jedi, but you don't matter.
You have no place in this story. You come from nothing. You're nothing.
You know, one of the things that baffled me about the response to The Last Jedi was people saying, well, it doesn't continue the story of The Force Awakens, even though it clearly does. For crying out loud, Rey's plot continues immediately after the end of that movie to the point where it creates timeline wonkiness. What I later learned was that people meant that J.J. Abrams set up a bunch of mystery boxes that Rian Johnson never followed up on. That made me even more baffled because I was trying to figure out what the hell mystery boxes everyone was talking about. Luke disappearing? It's answered in Last Jedi. C-3PO's red arm? Who gives a crap? It's 3PO and he's part of a ragtag resistance movement. It probably got damaged and they replaced it with one from a red android. Yes, I know there's a comic explaining it. Who cares? How did Maz get Luke's saber? Not important! But then it all circles back to Rey. The big mystery box around Rey. Because I have argued time and time again with people about Rey. How could she use the Jedi mind trick on a stormtrooper? How is she so good at piloting the Falcon? Why didn't she ever leave Jakku? How did she beat Kylo Ren? Each of these has an explanation. I've argued those explanations. She's naturally adept at the Force. She's a scavenger and has to know how ships work to know which parts are most valuable. She stayed because she couldn't accept that her parents weren't coming back for her. Kylo was severely injured, and again, the whole adept at the Force thing. And even though in all of those examples, she fails continually. Her first attempt at the mind trick didn't work. She dragged half the Falcon along the ground when she first took off. She accidentally opened the Rathtar tanks. She was repeatedly tempted to leave Jakku, but held back even though it would have been easy, and she only started beating Kylo by letting the Force guide her. She's still a mystery box to people that never got an explanation. Even though the explanations are all there. And then I remembered that stormtrooper she mind-tricked in Force Awakens, and a line that sums it all up.
Scavenger scum.
Why is being a scavenger worthy of being scum? They usually use that word for rebels. And when you're on a desert planet with few resources other than nabbing parts, which as we saw in Force Awakens, require knowledge, expertise, and physical skill and endurance most people couldn't handle, what makes that profession scum? And then it finally hit me. It's the reason why so many audience members can't look past her being a mystery box. She's not a person. She's not a character. She doesn't have talent or skill or anything useful to contribute. She's a puzzle to be solved. And when the answers aren't the ones they want, she's scum. And that's how Abrams and Terrio saw her. Not as a character, the Force's powerful light to balance Kylo Ren's powerful dark, as Luke said in Last Jedi. No. She's powerful because she's related to Palpatine. That's it. She's only important because she's related to somebody else powerful. People can only accept her being good at stuff if she's got that mighty bloodline. And that, my friends, is the divine right of kings bull that I have been decrying about this franchise ever since the prequels. Luke being Vader's son was important because it was a major step on his character journey. It wasn't, he's powerful because he's Vader's son. But then the prequels came along, and Vader was the chosen one. Blessed to the world is the virgin birth Christ allegory and his mighty Jesus blood. He couldn't just be another Jedi who got seduced by the dark side. He had to be, in all caps, important. And thus Luke was important because he was related to him. And to those people who wanted their mystery box, like the creators of this movie, and those who could not accept the perfectly reasonable answers about Rey in Force Awakens and Last Jedi, she's only important because she's a Palpatine. Sorry, Yoda, guess we're not luminous beings. This crude matter dictates who gets to be important. Let's hop back a few pages, shall we? Because this reveal also highlights just how dumb some of this actually is. So Kylo in The Last Jedi said that her parents were nobodies, and they try to brush this off by them needing to become nobodies. That is not how that works if the Force power is passed on like it has to Rey. What's more, in her memories, she saw her parents saying they loved her and needed her to be brave, but instead he said,
They're filthy junk traders who sold you off for drinking money. The dead. In a pauper's grave in the Jakku Desert.
It's been suggested that Kylo was lying to Rey, trying to manipulate her into joining his side, even doing the cold reading thing where he doesn't tell her who her parents are, she just establishes it herself and he runs with it. It's a fair point, he could very well have been saying that and not actually know who her parents were. Here's the problem. That is not Kylo Ren's character.
Do I really look like a guy with a plan?
Kylo Ren is an immature, overly emotional, impulsive, blunt instrument who lacks subtlety and control. A Darth Vader fanboy who wants to burn everything down because they don't play by his rules. He lashes out and destroys things around him when things aren't going his way, screaming at the world because he thinks they're not paying attention to him.
No, you're still holding on! Let go! Traitor! Blow that piece of junk out of the sky! More! Did you come back to say you forgive me? To save my soul? I'll destroy her, and you, and all of it. What girl? I'm sorry. I'm sure you are.
He said that Kylo Ren had an 8-pack.
Kylo Ren is not a liar. He speaks what he thinks is the truth because he thinks his truth is the only truth. He wants Rey to join him and thinks she will because he thinks she's as broken as he is. He's not trying to manipulate her, he just thinks he knows better than her. As I said at the start, I heard that there was no actual planned through line for the sequel trilogy. Every other week they kept changing their mind about Rey. She's nobody! She's Obi-Wan's daughter! She's Palpatine's daughter! She's Luke's daughter! Etc., etc. It's ridiculous, and yet really, all it is to, as the tally goes, placate haters of The Last Jedi. Rey can't be nobody, she's too good at everything. How could she possibly beat the trained, super awesome, bleeding to death, whiny, raging powder keg that is Kylo Ren when she has boobs? Well, there you go. It's because she's a Palpatine. Hey Kylo, what was that lie you didn't tell about selling her for drinking money again? What was their real motivation?
Search your memory. Remember them. See them. They sold you to protect you.
Rey's parents sold her to protect her? Wow, these were terrible parents. Or at least incredibly stupid. Seems to me that if I love my child, I want to keep them away from the all-powerful Sith Emperor who can come back from the dead, I'd want to put her someplace safer and more secure than just with some random asshole on a backwater planet where she'll probably stay barely alive because of the greedy, stingy jerkasses who trade food for salvage. I don't know, maybe Jakku used to be a really cool place to live back in the day, but the economy's really hit him hard lately. Without the Empire subsidizing dirt farms, small-town planets like Jakku just can't sustain themselves anymore. I mean, maybe you could have made this work. Like, if it wasn't her parents who did this, but your stupid mercenary Jedi hunter, he decided he didn't want to deliver her or someone killed him while he made a pit stop and stole his ship and then sold Kid Rey off. I mean, for crying out loud, at least when baby Luke had to live in the desert, he was given to his family to raise him and Obi-Wan stuck around to keep an eye on him. This plan is just the worst! Now, something that is not the worst that got people tilting their heads was, wait, the Emperor had a kid? With who? Who would want to screw his wrinkly old ass? And yeah, wow, have you not been on the internet very long? Even putting aside how people have different tastes for regular humans, I remind you that an Academy Award-winning movie was about a woman who fell in love with a fish man. People are into some wild stuff. Hell, it doesn't even have to be someone attracted to him, and I actually know someone who has told me they think Palpatine is hot. It could always just be some person who's an opportunist, attracted to the power of being consort to the Emperor and less into him as a person. Oh, but don't worry guys, Expanded Universe material explained that he's less an actual son, but rather a clone of Palpatine who didn't have Force powers, and that's why he doesn't look like a store mannequin that's melting. Not that that matters anyway, because that's not in the movie, but like, what? That actually does kind of make her his daughter in a roundabout way. It also makes Ochi's actions that much more baffling that they're related. Forget about the expanded universe clone thing. Going by just the movie and comic, these are the Emperor's family, and he doesn't do everything he can to go keep said son and granddaughter alive and found? And on top of all that, why did he go to Pasan? If he was still chasing after Rey, why was he landing there to get eaten by a snake instead of, like, anywhere else? Why did he think that she was on Pasan? Yes, it's not exactly Ochi's fault. His profession was Jedi Hunter, not Child Hunter. But wait! There's more! After this reveal, Kylo keeps going.
What Palpatine doesn't know is that we're a dyad in the Force, Rey. Two that are one.
What are you talking about? Are you just talking rubbish?
What does that mean? What the hell is that supposed to mean? Like, spoilers for The Acolyte, but they had a similar thing going on there? But it made a lot more sense because it was like twins. It was a whole thing. Here it's just two people who just happen to both be powerful and the Force equals two that are one? What the hell does that mean? How does Kylo even know that? I already used the too many questions clip, damn it! But whatever, Kylo does the "together we can rule the galaxy" spiel, but Rey isn't buying that, and fortunately the Falcon shows up for her to jump onto. They also use the Falcon's engines to blow away the stormtroopers, but this panel makes it look like they're all sliding towards the hangar bay entrance. Or at least that the artists used little fallen down action figures for reference. Palpatine contacts Kylo via the Force and reminds him to go kill Rey and not to betray him, or else he'll turn the fleet on him. We cut out Hux's attempt to BS General Pryde about what happened, and him getting shot by Pryde, who says they found their traitor. Here it's just the aftermath. So some have wondered why Hux would suddenly betray the First Order, ignoring, of course, that he says why he's doing so.
I don't care if you win. I need Kylo Ren to lose.
And if you don't get why he wants Ren to fail, well, then you haven't been paying attention, because...
It's a hard knock.
And even then, as he said, he's not actually on the good guy's side. He just hates Kylo Ren that much. But doesn't that undermine his own side too much? As a spy, he only has to give enough information that'll undermine Kylo, not the entire First Order. Honestly, what I was really hoping for was that during one of Kylo's insane ravings or something, Hux finally has enough of Kylo's growing madness and just orders his fleet away, or even pull an Operation Valkyrie on his ass. I'm okay with him dying like this because, yes, he's a friggin' space Nazi. He was never going to be redeemed. He was an asshole and deserved every bad thing that happened to him. And the fact that he goes down unceremoniously, shot by some dude only introduced in this movie, is more dignified than the space Nazi deserved. I'm just sad we didn't embrace the story opportunities. It almost feels like the filmmakers were embarrassed by how Hux kept getting knocked around in Last Jedi and decided to replace him with Richard E. Grant so they could have a more threatening villain. When of course the charm of Hux is that, like all Nazis, he's pathetic. We cut over to Agent Kloss again for another unnecessary scene with Leia, although this time it's Rose. And it's an attempt to fill a plot hole. See, it's kind of weird that nobody noticed a massive fleet of Star Destroyers getting built on Exegol. You kind of need a lot of resources to do that. And so Rose has gone through old Imperial Navy records and discovered gaps in said records. Entire construction stores missing that were no doubt used to build the ships over time, possibly even before the Empire fell. It's appreciated that Rose got some more to do, but this movie already has a clone Emperor whose soul can hop into other bodies and moving objects across space via energy field generated by all living beings. I don't think the evil Empire has slowly been making spaceships thing is really that huge a deal at this point. The comic cuts a scene where we learn the landing gear on the Falcon is damaged, and Rey tells Finn that she plans to kill the Emperor for what he did to her parents, and also tells him that she's sick of everyone saying that they know her when nobody really does. And I don't know if this was in the original script, or if this is an attempt post-movie release to try to fix this, but you know how in Return of the Jedi, the second Death Star was in orbit of the forest moon of Endor, and how colloquially, for like 40 years, we have just called it Endor? Well, that's the thing. The writers decided that the Death Star wreckage our heroes need to go to is guarded by a bit of an ocean. But it's hard to call it the forest moon of Endor if there's actually a big ocean or body of water in your way. So this particular bit of Death Star 2 wreckage has hit a different moon of Endor, Kef Bir, aka the ocean moon of Endor. Not that they ever say that in the movie, they just call it Endor as well, and confusing the audience because why the hell would you make Endor so unrecognizable? The Falcon, half crashes onto the surface, I'm guessing to explain why they don't just fly over the water to the wreckage. Poe points out with the size of the wreck, it could take years to find what they're looking for. Damn, if only you had someone on your team who was not only a skilled scavenger who could probably recognize what areas of this thing are probably not the Imperial Archive, but she has magical powers that help her sense Force-related things like she did earlier with the dagger. But no, it's time for the silliest plot point. And of course, it's that dagger. Rey remembers how it said, "Only this blade tells," and pulls out a secret little extendo bit from the dagger's hilt. If you hold up the dagger a certain way, the dagger is shaped like part of the debris, and the extendo bit points to a particular area.
Well, what do you know? It's not every day you see the stupidest thing you've ever seen.
So instead of a post-it note that said, "Hey, remember that the Wayfinder is in the Death Star wreckage," either Ochi or some other asshole with too much free time carved themselves a dagger in the shape of the wreckage of the Death Star, from a certain point of view, and painstakingly carved out runic symbols in a dead, forbidden language on said dagger, specifically with coordinates and even a repeated message that this dagger is the only thing that tells it. Look, I can believe that Exegol is protected in some way by some kind of navigational hazards or whatever that can only be maneuvered around with this Wayfinder, but that somebody felt the need in the last 2 or 3 or so decades to make this the way of locating the goddamn compass to get to the planet, as if they were hoping this would be some kind of Babu frickin' Indiana Jones puzzle in 1,000 years or whatever. No! Bad movie! Bad! Hell, why would Ochi even need the damn dagger? He worked for Palpatine already, so presumably he has either been to Exegol, or if he hasn't, he should probably take the Wayfinder, since I'm honestly shocked that the wreckage hasn't been stripped down into the water, so there's nothing left. I mean, if I was some kind of salvage company, or even some scientist or fan of the Emperor, I'd have been going over this place bit by bit to take anything of value, which would probably include the shiny pyramid thing found in the Emperor's throne room. Like, the dagger is completely unnecessary at this point, unless it also served as, like, a physical key to open a box or something containing the Wayfinder. Still silly, but not as silly as the goddamn shape of the thing matching the Death Star wreckage! A group of people approach our heroes on space horseback, and once again, an actual funny joke is cut from the comic.
Rough landing.
I've seen worse.
I've seen better.
We picked up a transmission from someone named Babu Frick. He said you'd come. Babu Frick, the true hero of the Star Wars franchise! What the hell do you mean Babu frickin' Frick sent out a transmission? Like, not even Zori. Specifically Babu Frick. The tiny little black market droidsmith sent out a message to the Endor system and said, "Hey, whoever is there, some people from the Resistance are coming your way. They're our only hope to stop the First Order. Hope you guys aren't evil. Bye!" What the hell does Babu Frick care about any of this? All he knows is that he got called in to do a memory wipe of 3PO to reveal a translation of the Sith language, and then the ones who did it left. Probably without paying, too! Now there's another line that should have gone mimetic from this movie. Someone named Babu Frick called. I can't even tell if this is dumber than the Sith dagger in the shape of the Death Star wreckage. You make the call! Or Babu Frick will! They explain to the woman, Janna, that they need to get to the wreck, but the water is too violent right now. Their only choice is to try to fix the Falcon to fly over, and she offers to help. While they make repairs, she explains her backstory to Finn. She and the rest of her group are former stormtroopers as well. They mutinied after being ordered to fire on civilians, then stole an old cruiser and came here. I don't even know how it happened. It wasn't a decision, really more like an instinct. A feeling. The Force. The Force brought me here. Brought me to Rey and Poe. Oh, thanks, movie. Not only does the Force only really matter if you're part of a powerful lineage, but you also don't get to have free will or make moral choices of your own. Cool. Yeah, I'm sure that's not what they mean, but that's the implication now. Finn didn't decide to desert the First Order out of fear and a sense of morality and horror over what they were doing. No. It was the will of the Force. But yeah, former stormtroopers. This was also kind of a thing in the Duel of the Fates script, some stormtroopers on Coruscant deciding to defect from Finn's example. Given how convoluted and bizarre the dagger thing is, it makes me wonder if that, along with every other part of this script, is a result of the Duel of the Fates script being rewritten over and over. Like what we're seeing is draft 15, so stuff that at one time made sense now is just nonsensical without the context it originally had. In any case, the comic includes a bit not in the movie, where Finn admits that with the way Rey talked about knowing things ahead of time, seeing things in visions, it's been happening to him too, but he hasn't figured out how to talk to her about it. Well, just wait until you're about to die and yell, "I'm Force sensitive!" Clearly that's the most appropriate thing to be saying in such a situation. And again, it doesn't matter here. So what if Finn is Force sensitive? This is the end of the trilogy. Maybe if he, saved the day with Force powers he didn't know he had, that'd be cool, but no. This is just nothing. He does apparently get a vision of Rey leaving, which, again, doesn't matter as Poe tells him the same thing right away. She gets a hold of a skimmer to take across the waters, and the Falcon isn't nearly ready to follow. As such, Jannah leads Finn to another skimmer while Rey enters the wreckage, her narration explaining her motivations. The Wayfinder leads the way to Exegol. I go there, kill the Emperor, and then this is all over. God, imagine if they made more sequels after this. Somehow Palpatine will return again. The galaxy will be safe. My friends will be safe. Babu Frick will be safe. She locates the Wayfinder, but suddenly has a vision of a dark Sith version of herself wielding a cool double-bladed lightsaber that can flip open or closed. She echoes Leia's, "Don't be afraid of who you are," and attacks. Rey is forced back out where Kylo Ren is waiting for her. Look at yourself. You wanted to prove to my mother that you were a Jedi, but you've proven something else. You can't go back to her now. Yeah, you can't go back to Leia now that you've seen a cooler lightsaber than the one you have. Why can't she go back exactly? Rey just keeps demanding he hand over the Wayfinder, but he crushes it in his hand and says she's only getting to Exegol with him. Naturally, she's pissed and this leads to a duel. As their fight goes outside, we see Finn and Jannah crossing the waters fairly easily in the skimmer, a bit not in the movie. I've never seen anyone make it across waters like this. Maybe the Force wants us here. Ask the Force what we're supposed to do next. That's not how the Force works. I think. Between that and the Last Jedi comic adaptation, the writers really wanted to make That's Not How the Force Works a thing in the sequels, when it only really works in Force Awakens. Anyway, they spot the fight, ending issue 3 with Finn yelling, "Rey!" which is frequently a criticism of the film. Finn doesn't actually do much except yell her name. It's not an unwarranted critique. We cut back to the Resistance base, where Leia wants to make one final attempt to try to contact Kylo and turn him from the dark side. In the movie, this had to be done via dialogueless stock footage, while here we get some actual words about this. Or I'm just an old fool. Even Luke couldn't bring Ben back. And if the Jedi Master couldn't pull him away from the dark side, I mean, even after all this time, we still don't know what the hell his deal is about us. How do we even begin to address it? You fear you are not strong enough, but you are— Oh my god, Maz, what the hell's going on with your face? It's like somebody grabbed that side of it and is yanking really, really hard. You are the heart of the Resistance. You are the one who is strong enough to stay. Oh god, look. In universe and narratively, it's a good line. The problem is that I live in the real world, and in the real world, that is a very uncomfortable line to have when she is the only one of you who is not actually there. Wait, the establishing shot says that this is yesterday? Why the hell is this yesterday? What's the point of this being a flashback? Why isn't it just going on at the same time? What time is it? As the battle rages, and by the way, a kudos I will give to the artist, Whilce Liney, is that while they seem to be having trouble keeping Maz's face from migrating off of her, sequences like this have been very well executed. Just incredibly good panel layout anytime Kylo and Rey are facing each other. A repeated motif of a mirror, a duology, a dyad, if you will. Just every single time it is a masterclass in panel layout. The fight comes down to Kylo about to strike down Rey, but then he hears his mother. In the movie, it's just her saying Ben, but in the comic, she says it's not too late for him to return. I'll be with you until the end. Which is in about 5, 4, 3... He drops his saber, and Rey grabs it, stabbing him in the stomach. Leia dies immediately as it happens. After this, Rey reaches down and uses her force healing to repair his injury. I did want to take your hand. Ben's hand. Yeah, but Ben Solo didn't offer his hand. It was Kylo Ren. Because up until this moment, there was no more Ben Solo. God, Rey kept saying over and over, oh, he's so conflicted and feels bad about what he did to his father. But we never see that. We never see the supposed issue he had with what he did. We never see him tortured or haunted by it. Never see him angrily defend himself. Even Snoke pushing his buttons about it was more just trying to lure Rey by hinting that he could be redeemed, even though— yeah, no, he was perfectly ready to kill everybody and take over. Even Leia had accepted this at the end of The Last Jedi, but nope, we already decided to repeat the plot point of our hero being connected to an evil guy, so now let's talk about redeeming a bad guy. Rey runs off and takes Kylo's ship, which is just parked a few feet away for some reason, and she is now leaving her friends and found family behind, the very reason she was doing all this. Cool, awesome, good narrative, guys. Our heroes return to the base and are told of Leia's death, with Chewbacca in particular getting a moment to roar and cry out. Now the last of the original trilogy crew still standing. God, and it was just Life Day 2. What the hell is he gonna tell the rest of the Wookiees when their best singer has died? Back with Kylo. Well, as I hinted at earlier, he witnesses a memory of Han Solo, who encourages him to fight for what his mother believed in. They echo the, "I don't know if I have the strength to do it" bit from Force Awakens, though obviously this time he tosses his saber into the water instead, becoming Ben Solo once more. 3 things to note. 1, the comic for some reason decided to have this shot where it looks like Adam Driver is pulling his face back and it looks awkward and weird. 2nd, the comic for some reason decided to split this scene in half, including another scene in the middle of the 2 pages. And 3rd, most importantly, this is so lame! As I said, the haunted by his father's death thing would actually have some weight if we ever saw him, haunted by his father's death. But no, getting stabbed, getting healed, and his mommy saying hi to him is enough to turn Kylo from the dark side. It's such a crock. It's not earned at all. One could argue Vader's wasn't earned either, but that just means that you have a second chance to do this right. Or, as I have maintained, Kylo should not have been redeemed at all. He should have been the actual main villain of this movie. Hell, in hindsight, we at least have the retroactive aspect of the prequels to show an Anakin who wasn't evil. We'll never get that with Kylo. We're not given a reason why we should want a redemption arc for him. We never see him as Ben Solo or any positive qualities that Ben had that would make us want to see him turn good, other than the fact that, well, being a bad guy makes Leia and Han bummed out and we actually like them. Why were the creators so averse to admitting, hey, sometimes people who we called family turn out to be really awful people and they will never redeem themselves and it's okay to reject them? Hell, much as I dislike Kylo's redemption because I wanted him to be a bad guy we hadn't seen before in the movies, I can see a redemption arc for him that he comes to after struggling over the course of the movie. And I mean really struggling. It's a hard pill to swallow given the rage and murder and atrocities he's committed, but this was nothing! Is it weird that Chris Terrio wrote 2 movies featuring a powerful character talking with their ghost dad? At least Han Solo didn't tell him that helping people is bad, I guess. In any case, a Star Destroyer is dispatched by the Emperor to attack Kijimi, and it reveals that it has a planet-destroying laser on it. Why did each of the sequel trilogy need to have Death Star tech in it? Was that the big takeaway from the franchise by the creators? I mean, at least with Last Jedi, it was miniaturized, designed to punch a hole in a bunker. This is just, say, you know what defines Star Wars? Planet killer lasers. That's what we need here. Like, a massive new Empire fleet was enough. Why did we need this too? The Emperor sent a ship from Exegol. Does that mean every ship in the fleet has planet-killing weapons? Of course they do. All of them. No, all you know is that the one ship has it. I mean, he's right, but for all you know, that's the extent of the resources necessary to do that. But whatever, Palpatine sends a new message. Listen, it's on every frequency, but primarily the Fortnite ones.
The Resistance is dead. The Sith flame will burn. All worlds surrender or die. The final order begins.
Oh, wait, no, that's just the Fox News signal. Let me try to find Palpatine's transmission. The comic cuts out that Poe was made acting general for some reason. He's a pilot. Yeah, Leia was prepping him a bit for leadership in Last Jedi, but, like, there were no other leaders who actually, led? But it doesn't matter much as Poe sits over Leia's body and contemplates how crappy this whole situation is and how he's not ready. Lando is here now, though, I guess. Neither were we. Luke, Han, Leia, me, who's ever ready? They were? They were, in fact, quite ready. They happily stepped into danger and were ready to take on the whole Empire after many, many exciting adventures both on and off screen. How'd you do it? Defeat an Empire with almost nothing. We had each other. That's how we won. Aw, that's sweet. No, that's not in fact how you won. You were all separated from each other, and you actually had a big-ass fleet, a Hail Mary effort by a Jedi to turn one of the villains into a good guy, and some teddy bears who helped a commando raid blow up a shield generator. That is how you won, not the power of friendship. I love the power of friendship, but that ain't what saved the day. Hell, even if that was how you did it, Rey is separated from you now. Your movie's message about the power of friendship conquering all might have held some weight if the group was all together, which would be awesome about emphasizing that found family thing that works well for a Rey who had crappy parents. But we don't have that Rey anymore. So instead, we have the craptacular version of Rey, who is connected to a lineage. Thus, the found family stuff can go piss off as far as this film is concerned. These are just empty platitudes. Ugh. Anyway, scenes are reordered a bit. In the movie, Finn learns that Dio has a bunch of information about Exegol because Ochi was going there, but also that the Emperor wanted Rey alive, not killed. Also, Poe makes Finn a general in a brief exchange. I guess I remembered the movie wrong because one of the things I originally walked away from it that I was mad about was how the main characters suddenly seemed to just hate being around each other when Force Awakens had done such a great job making them like each other and be friendly. But rewatching the movie for this review, I'm completely off base. They're still great friends with each other. Again, could have been great for found family, but who gives a crap, right? So that scene got moved back. Instead, Rey has traveled back to Ahch-To and crashed the fighter. The dialogue here is condensed for better and worse, probably because we're running out of comic when we still have a little under an hour of movie left. God, this movie is paced badly too, cramming in so much to the point where it feels like we're approaching a natural end by now. Rey tosses Luke's lightsaber at the flaming wreckage. Well, it's supposed to be her throwing it, but with the way it's drawn, it looks like it's being yanked telekinetically from her hand. But it's caught by Luke's Force Ghost. A Jedi's weapon deserves more respect. The first thing you did after I handed it to you was toss it away. Okay, the truth is that the thing has finally fallen out of warranty and we can't afford replacement parts. Happy? He asks her what she's doing and she explains her vision of being on the Sith throne. Didn't that same vision include Kylo, but then you healed him? A line cut here is that she intends to do what Luke did, become a hermit on Ahch-To. However, Luke then admits that he was wrong and it was fear that kept him there, asking what she's most afraid of. Which, seems like a stupid question when she just said that she was afraid of her vision, that she's afraid of herself. Must be why the comic just has him say, "You're afraid of yourself because you're a Palpatine." Makes sense that he knows. He's a Force ghost now. He's watching over her from Force Purgatory or wherever the hell Force ghosts hang out.
Leia knew it too.
What?
Leia knew it too. Look, if you're not going to take this seriously, I'm out.
It works with the line of Leia saying not to be afraid of herself, but when did she find out? How? Like with so many other things, it doesn't even matter narratively, and instead adds a whole slew of questions. Thankfully, the comic cuts that line. I don't doubt Leia would have still cared for Rey and trained her even knowing that. It's just a problem of, how the hell did she find out before literally everyone else? Luke reminds her that there are things stronger than blood. Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. So, the Jedi are just Green Lanterns? If you don't face Palpatine, it will mean the end of the Jedi, and the war will be lost. Oh, why am I adding to the tally there? Because the point of the end of The Last Jedi and Luke's declaration of how he will not be the last Jedi in that is that the Jedi won't end just because he's not there to train them. That little kid from Canto Bight heard the stories about the Jedi and can become one himself. It's not about books or lifting rocks or anything like that. The Force will still be there. Even Luke explained that in the film.
That Force does not belong to the Jedi. To say that if the Jedi die, the light dies is vanity.
But no, here comes this movie to tell you that Rey needs to be the one to fight him because everything will be lost otherwise. There was a theory I saw going around when the title of this movie was announced that maybe the Jedi would indeed end, but the legacy of the Jedi contains just as much dark deeds and underhanded dealings in the name of the light, that maybe what the title referred to was the birth of a new, better organization. The Skywalkers. Nope, just same old, same old. Luke brings Rey to something that Leia would have wanted her to have, her old lightsaber. In a flashback, he says at the end of her training, she sensed the death of her son at the end of her Jedi path and surrendered the saber to him, that someone else would finish her journey with it. I am confused what the hell that's supposed to mean. Like, if she became a Jedi, Ben would die, and she foresaw someone else picking it up for her instead? Did it also tell her about Snoke and Palpatine somehow returning and Babu Frick? What the hell? 1,000 generations live in you now. Better start making some room. It's gonna get crowded. Rey says she can't go to Exegol. She destroyed the ship she came in and the Wayfinder is gone. Luke says she has everything she needs and she returns to the burnt-out ship, discovering the Wayfinder Kylo Ren had gotten at the start. She still needs a ship, but oh, see? Luke is lifting his X-Wing out of the water. He couldn't do that in Empire Strikes Back, but he can now. Hell, in the movie, the music from that scene is playing. And that's important for Rey's character because she didn't think the Force could do that. I mean, that must be the reason for it, since that was the point of the original scene, that Luke didn't truly understand the Force and needed that moment to experience the awe and power of it. It couldn't possibly be just blatant, pointless fan service to make an original trilogy character look cool instead of, doing anything to advance the main character of this trilogy. People disliked how the sequel trilogy killed or sidelined the original trio of Luke, Han, and Leia. Thing is, though, it's not their story anymore. They had their trilogy. They had their story. They had the most interesting part of their lives told. The sequel trilogy is about Rey, Finn, Poe, and Kylo. Their journeys, their character arcs, the most interesting parts of their lives. And if Disney continues to make more movies in several years, it'll hopefully be the stories of other new characters with the heroes of the sequel trilogy sidelined, because their stories have now been told, and it's time for someone else. These are not superhero comic books. Actors age, die, and are replaced with others, so let the movies do the same thing. We're going to talk some more about this later, but I despise how Disney calls the main series of movies the Skywalker saga. It is so disrespectful to the sequel characters. Sorry guys, these aren't your movies. It's still about the same friggin' lineage. You're not your own characters. You are defined by your relationship to the original trilogy's characters. By the way, is it just me, or does Luke look like crap in these scenes? Like, they put him in the white Jedi robes, but his hair, probably a wig, looks even stringier and more unkempt than in Last Jedi, where he was supposed to be scruffier and all. The robes also don't look like they fit right, making him bulkier and without a neck. How do you do that? Anyway, back with the Resistance, 3PO meets up with R2, who indeed uses a memory backup to restore his memories right up until they left on the mission. Which feels like it undercuts the whole sacrifice he made for his memories and everything. It's not the worst thing in the world. There's still some loss there and a tragedy in that he doesn't remember making the sacrifice, but still. Sucks that there are no actual consequences to that. Our heroes download data on Exegol to their computers, showing that the atmosphere of the place is hellish. How does a fleet even take off like that? Well, I'd presume they'd build them in space? In a shipyard? Hell, we've seen a Star Destroyer being assembled and was already floating in the air, so... They get a transmission from Rey and Luke's X-Wing, transmitting waypoints to show the Resistance how to get to Exegol. From there, they assemble their plan. They think, for whatever reason, that the Star Destroyers haven't been launched yet. They're vulnerable on the planet's surface until they leave the atmosphere. Said atmosphere is wreaking havoc on their navigational systems, so they need some kind of signal from a nav tower on how to safely exit. If they can destroy that tower before they hit the atmosphere, the Star Destroyers will be vulnerable to an aerial attack. Rose's research indicates that hitting their Death Star cannons will ignite their main reactors. Thus, that's their window to pull this off. The movie includes this line.
We need to put some hold-on maneuvers. Do some real damage.
Come on, that move is 1 in a million.
And that was pretty blatant given the amount of people who complained about it, and especially no one would be thinking about it in a time like this, given it's a suicide move. I don't really expect a bunch of Resistance members to jump to lightspeed to take out a single Star Destroyer or anything. The comic wisely cuts it out, instead talking about how they're still not exactly equipped with a huge fleet, mostly fighter craft. Lando and Chewie are going to head to the core systems and try to recruit people out there to join them for the mission. The First Order wins by making us think we're alone. We're not alone. Especially not you, two-headed pod race announcer voiced by Greg Proops. You're especially never alone. That brings us to the final issue of this mess. We cut out the brief speech Poe and Finn give in the montage leading up to the Resistance departing. It's a decent one, but the comic includes instead Lando's message to the core worlds. And sadly, it's kind of better. This is General Lando Calrissian. If you're listening to this broadcast, you're our last hope. God, imagine the poor schmoes just trying to watch that Harvey Korman cooking show from the holiday special, but it keeps getting interrupted by assholes making big transmissions to the galaxy every other hour. You've all heard the threats. The final order is coming for us. And we've lost our leader, General Leia Organa. She spent her whole life toppling tyrants, fighting to bring freedom to the galaxy. She never gave up. And when you were too scared to stand against the First Order, she stood for you. But now, Leia's gone. She can't fight for us anymore. So without her, here's what I think is a radical but fair plan. Our unconditional surrender. Who's with me? Leia believed that just a spark of hope could bring down this so-called final order. Maybe it's the old gambler in me, but I'm betting everything that she was right. Admittedly, I also cheated at gambling, so... Time and again, I've seen us dealt some of the worst hands imaginable.
What is this card? Rules for drawn stud poker.
But we're still here. And we're still fighting. Not for Leia or her memory. She wouldn't want that. She'd tell you to fight for yourselves. That it's up to all of us to keep that light alive now. But we can't make it through this night alone. And people turn off the transmission because he's about to ask for political fundraising. While Rey lands and descends to Palpatine's chamber, the Resistance arrives and targets the tower. Pride's Star Destroyer detects this and orders them to switch the navigation signal to their ship so they can guide the fleet out themselves. I don't know how that's supposed to work since, you know, if they can do that, why do they even have a tower? But whatever. We're finally in the home stretch of this mess. Rey approaches Palpatine's throne room.
Long have I waited for my grandchild to come home. I have so many Christmas cards for you, so many cookies that I have baked.
This was my final hope when watching the movie in the theater, that Palpatine was gonna laugh and say,
"Yeah, I made up that thing about you being my granddaughter to manipulate Ren. You're some nobody who's strong in the Force."
But nope. Oh, but Palpatine also claims that he never wanted her dead. That's why he sent a Jedi Hunter assassin to get her. And then told Ren to kill her. Because this movie is stupid. Yeah, Ochi may have just been trying to grab her, and he figured Ren could either corrupt her or make her join him in an attempt to assassinate him or whatever, but let's move on. See, they need to have a reason why Rey doesn't just slice his head off and be done with it.
Your hatred, your anger, you want to kill me. That is what I want. Kill me, and my spirit will pass into you, as all the Sith live in me.
Okay, that sounds like bullcrap. You are full of it. Because why would you tell her that? Just be like, "Mwahaha, I'm the Sith Emperor, and if you don't serve me, I'll fight you," and then let her kill you just to get it done. I mean, Palpatine is an arrogant dick, but like, if you tell her your plan, she could just be like, "Okay, I won't kill you, but I can slice your arms and legs off and burn your lips shut. How's about that?" No, this is spin doctoring. Oh, also, all the Sith live in me? The hell is that supposed to mean? Were you planning on absorbing Darth Vader at some point, too? What about all the Sith cultists who helped work with you here? And like, just as new Jedi are constantly being born, so are new Sith. There's always gonna be somebody who's like, "Yeah, I want to use my magical powers for profit and gain. Woo, Sith," and all that. Or were you just gonna drink every Sith you ever came across? But whatever. Rey says she doesn't hate him, which feels like it should mean something, like, again, the culmination of a journey or character arc, but it's not there. This is not what her arc has been. There is an argument to be made about Rey's parentage being related to Palpatine working, because then it becomes a story about overcoming an evil legacy and forging your own path. Even Poe's own revised backstory seems to be about that as a drug dealer who turned to good, and Finn learning of other stormtroopers who deserted like him. But that's an aspect introduced only in this movie. It's not what their character arcs were in the other two. Hell, is Rey even ever actually tempted? Luke wasn't tempted either. It was just murder in anger equals dark side. She always rejected the evil lineage. She never wanted to be a part of that, even ready to go be a hermit like Luke. Criminy, the Emperor actually kind of sucks at this. I think the only time he ever actually turned someone evil was Anakin. And even then, it wasn't seduced by the dark side. It was, "I'm afraid my wife is going to die in childbirth despite her being an influential senator in a technological utopia that has robots acting as doctors and nurses." Was every writer in these movies just afraid that if we ever showed characters truly tempted by the power of the dark side, it'd make people want to join their side because of how cool it sounded? Actually, never mind. Given the state of the world, I could totally see that as a concern. Hey, here's an idea. You brought back Palpatine. Fine. You wanted to be connected to Rey somehow? Fine. Instead of her being his granddaughter and all that crap that comes from that, let's go back again to the Darth Plagueis story where we got the unnatural line and all that. There was always an implication, just an implication, never confirmed in the movies, that Palpatine had somehow used the Force to summon Anakin into existence, manipulated the midichlorians to create life itself. How about we actually confirm that with Rey? Rey is not actually born. Palpatine somehow managed to create life, not even impregnating a woman, but creating a powerful Force-sensitive being out of nothing. To be his agent, to be his vessel, whatever bullcrap. But something goes wrong and the baby ends up on Jakku with exactly what Kylo describes. A couple of junk traders who sold her for drinking money. Yes, it's not perfect. It still has the problem of her being super special amazing because she was connected to powerful beings instead of just being a complete rando. But that does mean that she's still became her own person. She's not from a lineage, she is literally just Rey. That's it. And she forges her own path for herself and makes her own family. It preserves the themes from Last Jedi and pays off all that supposed mystery box bullcrap about her. Hell, it gives an interesting contrast. Instead of her being the powerful light to counter Kylo's powerful dark, it's the other way around. To maintain balance, the Force made Kylo the powerful dark side user to counter her powerful light. And Palpatine fears her because he knows what he created and knows she's his undoing. Let's get back to the rest of our heroes. Finn stopped by to pick up Janna and her troops to help in this whole thing, and they land on Pride's Star Destroyer to destroy the navigation tower on their ship. And you know what? Great action set piece, fighting on space horseback atop an actual Star Destroyer. That is pretty cool, unique, and exciting for the climax of the movie. They succeed, but Finn can sense that they're resetting their systems to do this again, so goes with Janna to stop them. Palpatine shows Rey the battle overhead and, like with Luke, because we're just repeating bits of Return of the Jedi now, tries to get her to attack him via her anger and fear about the fate of the Resistance. This would, of course, be incredibly stupid, since it's not like Palpatine will save them after he possesses her body, but hey, it's a bit of a stressful situation going on here. But let's add another wrinkle to that. Somehow, Ben Solo has arrived! Yeah, he apparently commandeered a TIE fighter from somewhere? I don't know, maybe he found one in the Death Star wreckage? Whatever, point is, apparently you only need a wayfinder the first time to get here. It's like riding a bicycle in the Hellscape planet. The comic cuts out Finn and Janna commandeering a turret to fire on the destroyer's command deck, other than a single panel because we're really rushing to the end here, while Ben is confronted by the Knights of Ren. Oh man, this is such a significant moment for his character! All the times they've shared together! Remember that one time when they stood next to him? Palpatine rambles about this all being a ritual, and I just realized that this scene is actually kind of ripping off the one in Snoke's throne room in Last Jedi. Yeah, the villain is arrogantly describing what a character will do, particularly involving using a lightsaber to strike someone down, but boom, it's a fake out and they're actually joining forces against guys in red armor and wielding unique weapons. In this case, Rey using the Force teleportation thingy to give Ben Luke's saber. This means something, I guess, for Palpatine, because he suddenly backs off and lets his guards attack her. Like, can he only be killed by that saber? What difference does it make, dude? By the by, giving her Leia's saber, I hate it. Why? Because this goes back to that whole lineage and whose story this is. She's saddled with the baggage of someone else, the identity of someone else, the legacy of someone else, as opposed to just being her own person. She's been using Luke's saber this whole time. It gets broken in Last Jedi, but she's using it again until now, where she takes up Leia's saber instead. She doesn't get to have her own saber in this story, she inherits it. So here's another idea for how we can still make this work with the stupid Rey Palpatine reveal. The theme for Rey is now forging your own path separate from your bloodline. It feels at odds with what we had before, but we can make this work and still have a satisfying story. You want to know the first way you do it? She refuses to use Luke's lightsaber. If she's gonna make her own path, she's gonna build her own. Hey, she was at the first Jedi temple after all. She can scrounge through the ruins of the tree and find a kyber crystal, and we see her assemble a lightsaber. Something we've never actually seen in one of these movies. It'd be a cool moment, unique for this film, and solidifies, no, I am not Palpatine's granddaughter, I am Rey, and that's who I define myself as. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry, she needs to use Luke or Leia's lightsaber because she's actually being adopted into their lineage at the end. Gotta continue the royal bloodline. Can't be your own person. This is the Skywalker saga after all. I mean, screw me, people. She could even hand Luke's lightsaber over to Kylo while she forges her own path. He embraces his light side lineage. She makes something new for herself. Just like even the bad decisions have things that could have worked, could have been powerful, but I guess that's not as important as a Sith dagger that looks like Death Star debris. Anyway, Ben and Rey are reunited. Palpatine uses the Force on them, but doing so suddenly starts draining their life force, I guess, and that starts regenerating his craptacular clone body.
The life force of your bond, a dyad in the Force, a power like life itself.
Oh, silly me, that's what a dyad in the Force means. A life force you can suck up. This is what the sequel trilogy's been building up to, huh? But yeah, he drains them and things are not going well up above. Poe apologizes to his forces, saying there are just too many of them. And then Lando arrives. But there are more of us, Poe. There are more of us. The true message of Star Wars is, Numbers. Okay, I'll grant you, in my rewatch, there is something pretty exciting to having this massive fleet show up while the Star Wars ending credits music plays, though I think a lot of that is on the strength of John Williams. Something they cut for the comic is Pride asking where the hell this Navy came from.
It's not a Navy, sir, it's just people.
Meaning what exactly? Oh, it's just people. Like, are you saying the real resistance was in all of us? It's the friends we made along the way? How does this thematically connect with the rest of the movie? It's presented like it's some thematic punctuation mark, like when the Joker's plan in The Dark Knight fails, or all of George Bailey's friends coming to help him in the end of It's a Wonderful Life. The proof of the thesis statement of the story. But it's not! We weren't building up to this. We saw one planet the First Order was oppressing, the other one was just having a happy festival without any issues. You know what? I take it all back. It's exactly what they said it is. It's just people. Nothing more, nothing less. There is no message from it. It's just people. People are just here now. If I wanted to be cynical, I could say the real meaning was, I am angry that nobody came to the Resistance's aid on Crate, so now everybody is coming to them. I hate The Last Jedi. And what's funny is that this line would have worked if they had actually kept Rey's family being nobodies, because then it does thematically fit. Average people doing extraordinary things. Yes, I will grant you that it's set up with what Zori said, but here's the real stinger. This doesn't actually affect anything in the plot. The Emperor is unfazed by this, and it's actually going to come down to Jedi and Sith crap. Plus, it kind of feels like it hurts Poe's plot, because it wasn't him who rallied everybody, becoming the true leader of the Resistance at this moment. It was Lando! Oh, and the biggest sin of the comic adaptation is that it doesn't show us Zori and the real hero of the movie, Babu Frick, also joining the fight like in the film. So yeah, as I said, Star Destroyers are getting blown up left and right, but Palpatine's just gloating about his restored life. Also, the comic doesn't show the hundreds, if not thousands, of Sith cultists just hanging out in this big arena for some reason. Do they play sports in this place when they're not doing evil spirit possession rituals? But yeah, Palpatine fires the biggest force lightning ever into the sky and starts zapping ships out. Rey wakes up and looks at all this, finally able to commune with the voices of the Jedi, and it is done so poorly in the movie itself. Like, it wasn't until Yoda's voice came in that I understood what was happening. The sound mixing was so bad and so quiet that I couldn't hear what the hell they were saying, or even what it was that she was hearing. Even now, I had to turn up the volume on my computer to hear it. The comic will do it better in a bit. At the very least, I can read the word bubbles, even if there isn't a face attached to them. Palpatine sees her rise up and shoots her with the lightning. Fortunately, with Obi-Wan's voice being one of the Jedi she hears, she suddenly learns how to use her lightsaber to block the lightning. I'm guessing.
You are nothing. A scavenger girl is no match for the power in me.
A line that would have worked much better if indeed she was unrelated to Palpatine and just a nobody, but as Kylo Ren said, she has his power, so...
I am all the Sith!
And I am all the Jedi. All 19 of them by my count. Yeah, a better visual representation of this moment than the movie gave, where she just pulls a second lightsaber, no visuals of other Jedi, and walks close enough for his lightning to reflect back at him and, like, gooify his body. You'd think after the second time this happened, he learned how to turn the damn Force lightning off, but Palpatine's kind of a one-trick pony, you know? It's not shown in the comic, but this causes a huge blast in the area that kills all the Sith cultists, so, like, the Guardians of Peace and Justice slaughtered a whole lot of people right there. The comic, needing to condense things, doesn't show Finn and Janna taking out the command ship bridge and needing to be rescued by Poe. Oh no, wait, I'm sorry, Lando undermines Poe getting to do stuff again and is the one who saves the two. And hey, I love Lando, I'm just saying the movie seems to prefer him to one of our leads. Rey collapses, dying from the effort as Ben Solo approaches her. With the last of his strength, he gives her back the life force she used before to save him. She kisses him.
Well, it's hardly worth it, but boo!
And as Ben dies, we see a flashback of him as a baby, a child, and learning under Luke. Yeah, remember all those happy times, like when he murdered his father, or tortured you, or tried to kill all your friends, or throw you into a tree, or... Yeah, I have never understood the idea of a romance between these two. Sure, ship whoever you want, not my thing, and I don't judge, but this kind of goes back to the problem of a redemption arc for him. We're never shown a reason why we should want a redemption other than being a bad guy is bad, and we are continually shown reasons why he is an evil bastard who should have been on the receiving end of a lightsaber a long while ago. If he was going to be redeemed, he needed to actually do things to be redeemed. He showed up here, and then affected nothing. He got shoved off a cliff and then healed Rey. And he only healed Rey because the creators decided that Rey should die after that whole thing, so Ben can heal her and then die as part of his redemption. Just like Vader, but not as good. Oh, and in the movie, both him and Leia's bodies disappear and they become one with the Force or whatever, because I guess that's just how all Jedi die now. The movie shows a montage of Star Destroyers falling across the galaxy, and there's a meta reason why, we'll talk about that in a minute, that is not featured in the comic. Instead, Luke and Leia's Force ghosts talk. They really pulled it off, Luke. Didn't doubt it for a minute. After all, we are what they grow beyond. You, maybe. I flew through space once. Honestly, if you'd given me 5 minutes with Palpatine, I'd have been done with him a lot faster. Yeah, the ending celebrations are really truncated, though in the corner you can see Maz giving Chewbacca the medal. Oh, the medal. The medal he didn't get in A New Hope. Yeah, it's nice that he got it. It's nice that he got his token finally, you know, right? That's what matters. I mean, there was such a mistake from the original Star Wars, right? Everybody pointed it out, made jokes about it. Ha ha ha. Let's finally fix that, right? I originally wrote a big rant about this years ago as I was writing the script, but we're at the end. I'm so tired, and who gives a damn? I'm just going to say that this is the bronze medal for the sequel trilogy, and it's only bronze because they don't make medals with crappier metal beyond that. Oh, by the by, the medal thing was in the Trevorrow script too. It was equally dumb there. Another bit they cut is where it's implied that Janna might be Lando's daughter. I mean, why not at this point? Everybody's related to somebody. Poe, you are the son of C-3PO. After all, your name's Poe. P-O. Boom! I just blew your minds. Rey reunites with Poe and Finn, hugging them. And this is where the movie should have ended. It's no yub-nub, but her reuniting with found family, perfect. Nope, one more scene for the movie and one more page of comic. Rey heads to the moisture farm. Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru's moisture farm, now half buried in the sand. She buries Luke and Leia's lightsabers and reveals that she has her own new yellow-bladed lightsaber for herself. The one that she should have been using this entire goddamn time. Some random woman walks up to her. There's been no one for so long. Really? Just spent a lot of time wondering why nobody is hanging around the moisture farm where there were 2 charred skeletons out front? You must have a lot of free time, lady. Who are you? I'm Rey. Rey who? Rey Frick. No, she says Rey Skywalker. And so our comic and the movie, the Star Wars saga, ends with her watching the 2 suns set. This comic, as an adaptation of Rise of Skywalker, is mostly fine. It hits the major plot beats, and I understand why they made a lot of the cuts they did. Some of the things they added were an improvement, but not by much, and plenty of it was still garbage. And there's no adaptation that'll save this crap movie. Let's start with that ending. There is no reason for her to bury the lightsabers at the moisture farm. None. This isn't Luke's home. He went away from it. He didn't want to be there. He spent the first act of A New Hope trying to leave. The expanded universe did have a story or two about letting other people run the moisture farm because, hey, he did love his aunt and uncle and probably wanted something better for them, but he otherwise wanted nothing to do with it. But at least Luke lived there for a good chunk of his life, was raised there. Leia's lightsaber has no reason to be buried there. I mean, for crying out loud, if you're gonna pull that crap, just dump her lightsaber out into the debris at Alderaan. You wanna know why they're doing this? Because of the lineage crap. This is the inheritance of the Skywalker family. Some half-buried farm in the middle of a desert. And since she's a Skywalker now, that's all she has. It's not about who she is individually. It's not about who we become or what her development is. This is the old Skywalker house, so you get to have your weapon, the only representation we have of you, to be buried. Left behind there. And she gets to look at the twin sunset like Luke did. Because she's a Skywalker now, and that's what Skywalkers do. Look at the sunset on Tatooine. It actually had significance for Luke on Ahch-To, bringing his journey full circle, although some have argued that it's actually a sunrise, which is kind of cooler, but not for Rey. You know what would have worked for her? In The Force Awakens, she saw a spaceship taking off and clearly wanted to leave, but was choosing to stay behind to wait for her family. How about instead, her closing shot is her with the rest of the Resistance, and she watches a spaceship take off, but she doesn't want to leave now because she's found her family. But why would we want symbology and closure for the main characters of this trilogy when instead we can keep mining that original trilogy nostalgia? Because clearly that's all we wanted. We just want to see stuff we've seen before. Remember this thing? Well, here it is again. You could have just watched the thing you remember, but instead you paid money to see it again, but with someone it doesn't match with. But you remember it, so it's cool! What a load. I said in my last Jedi review that Rey was a character who was trying to replay the story of Darth Vader's redemption, thinking history was repeating itself. A repeated criticism of the sequels up to this point was, well, they're just trying to rehash what happened in the original trilogy. And the truth is, the creators were well aware of that criticism, and in The Last Jedi were trying to break away from that, to put the very idea of history repeating itself to the test. And it was found to be lacking. Rey is not Luke Skywalker. Kylo Ren is not Darth Vader. He's too far gone, too damaged by everything that's happened. Rey is not the secret child of a villain, and she'll scream, "No!" and get her hand cut off and whatever. The Resistance is not the Rebellion. They're not just going to kill the Emperor and everything is A-okay. And then Rise of Skywalker happened, and they just said, no. We're going to rehash everything. Rey is related to another character. Kylo will be redeemed. We just kill the Emperor and everything is good again. Just the same story over. What the sequel trilogy really should have, and seemed to have been shaping itself around, was a story about people who rise from nothing. Who aren't special, who have no great lineage, no important parents coming through and defeating an evil that thinks they're entitled to glory and power and strength simply because of the virtue of their heritage. The First Order co-opting the symbols of fascism, Kylo Ren thinking he's the heir apparent to Vader. And here comes this girl, born to filthy junk traders. She's got nothing but herself, and she's every bit as powerful as he is, and she didn't need no stinking Skywalker blood to do it. It rejects the idea that lineage and legacy are about who you were born to, but rather the ideals you inherit and how you make them better. This movie thinks it's doing that with this ending where she declares herself Rey Skywalker, but no, she's just switching from one powerful family to another. Your point is completely undermined by having her be Palpatine's granddaughter. One of the things I saw people say about the Emperor's presence is that it's supposed to be the culmination of the previous 8 movies. Hence why we have that shot of Cloud City, Endor, and Jakku during the end. Could have fooled me! I thought this was the sequel trilogy! As in the 3 movies that matter, not 9! And what culmination? Say what you will about Avengers Endgame, but that was the culmination of the MCU up to that point. It's why it touched on so many parts of its history. This movie is a big scavenger hunt so that we can kill the Emperor again! If this was a culmination of the entire saga, we would have actually gone to Naboo and Tatooine and Coruscant and Hoth and Kamino and every other major place in the previous movies, brought up plot points from them that suddenly have relevance again. We go to Endor again, but it's not even recognizable as Endor. Where is the feeling like this is a culmination of 9 movies, the apotheosis of the franchise? Oh, but Rey summoned all those Jedi from the past to help her. Yeah, that's a cameo, not a culmination. Not that you can even tell with how badly that was put together. They started calling this the Skywalker saga only at this point in order to try to retcon a justification for the Emperor being the final bad guy again. Think about that. Who the hell was calling the movies the Skywalker saga when The Force Awakens came out? They only do it now to justify their dumbass decisions for this movie! The themes are so muddied up by the attempt to course correct. It feels hollow and empty, inconsistent with what we had in the previous 2 movies. It has themes, it has good moments, but they're buried and easily forgotten about because of the crushing weight of trying to make everybody happy, when that was never gonna happen! I mean, let's face it, the people who hated the last 2 movies aren't gonna be appeased by this movie, and by changing direction so radically, you alienated the people who did like them! And hey, I'm not so full of hate that I can't admit that I enjoyed going through the movie more this time around than I did the first. It helps that the punch of Palpatine and the Rey revelation are no longer fresh, and I know they're there, so I can look at the movie for what it's trying to do. The writing setup and payoff is stronger than I remember, and the dynamics between our leads are actually much better than I thought, full of exciting spectacle and some genuinely fun moments. But none of that matters in the end when it drops the ball so hard on its messaging, with plot points that either confuse or infuriate instead of inspiring wonder or positive emotion. Star Wars is about more than shocking twists about who's related to who. It's about more than arguments concerning Dragon Ball Z power levels. It's supposed to be our step into a larger world, and yet this movie made it feel so much smaller and restricted. The thing I said back in the Force Awakens review concerning the sequels Even if they're bad, at least we'll get some good new Star Wars jokes out of this. So even though I hate Rise of Skywalker, did we? Yes! I mean, do you guys remember the Rey Star Wars memes? I used one myself back in the Transformers retrospective. Somehow, Palpatine returned! They fly now! Babu Frick, for crying out loud! So yes, even though this movie hurt the franchise badly, we know it'll recover as long as we can find joy in it. I'm sure there will be even more new Star Wars in the future, and we should welcome it. Give it a chance, because even if it's terrible, one thing we can all agree on is that there's something about this franchise that makes us happy. Whether that be inspiration from the best stuff, or how much we laugh at the awful, awful stuff. Rise of Skywalker certainly damaged the franchise, but it's not like it ended it. Nothing's ever really gone. Happy New Year, and may the Force be with us, always. And if you think Star Wars hasn't always been trying to make money hand over foot, I would remind you that during the prequels, they ran a campaign for Pizza Hut, KFC, and Taco Bell, and said that Colonel Sanders, the Taco Bell Chihuahua, and some pizza lady could defeat the dark side. Should have been Pizza Head. I don't care if he was a Mr. Bill ripoff. I mean, he already did a Star Wars-related commercial anyway.
You're relieved that we're here.
Thank goodness you're here.
Welcome, guys.
Did she do that to us?
Hello, my friends. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon, buy merch from the Store Envy link in the description, or check out the t-shirts available from Fourth Wall. Thanks for watching.